Aloha no. Mahalo nui ke ia kono ana me iau. Pehea oi ke ila? First of all, let's all agree, there isn't one Hawaiian language anymore. You have this big swath of varieties of Hawaiian. That's a way to get at what's going on in the mind of a native speaker. And that's the universe, is that mind. As a malihini, and you can be native Hawaiian, I don't care how much Hawaiian you 100%. If you're not speaking Hawaiian, you're not in there. You're not there. Every language evolves. No, that's not what's going on here. Mm-hmm. This was a language that was lost and is being retrieved by a committee. So the Lexicon committee, which I was a member, I can tell you straight up, no, it's a committee of English speakers inventing new language that is entirely unintelligible to native speakers. So it's a project of inventing new language out of an English mind. It wasn't cool to be interested in Olelo Hawaii. If you were into Hawaiian culture, and if you're a male, you must be mahu.
Lelina mai kako. Welcome to Keep It Aloha, a podcast that keeps it aloha me ka olelo Hawaii ana ina la apo no ka mea o kia ka olelo o kia aina. I'm your host Kamaka, and I said it's a podcast that keeps it aloha by speaking Hawaiian every day because it's the language of this land. This is gonna be an amazing episode, but before we introduce our guest, let me remind you to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/kamakadias if you want to support us for as little as $3 a month. If supporting us with money is not for you, but you still love this podcast, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps out so much with the algorithm and helps us get bigger opportunities in the future. I read every single review because I appreciate it so much. And to prove it, I want to share this review from Amy 100. This person says, a must-listen podcast for everyone. I so enjoy this podcast. It's my little piece of Hawaii and makes me feel like I live there, even though I don't. The topics are really interesting and the people who do the interviews have cool lives and stories. Well, Amy, we have somebody with a really cool life and story for today's episode. So mahalo for leaving that awesome review. Let's introduce our guest. Support for this podcast comes from Texaco in Hawaii, which features 58 convenient locations across the state. Fueling up at Texaco is fast and easy when you use the Texaco mobile app to pay at the pump. The Texaco mobile app is a contactless way to pay for fuel so you can get in and out of the gas station quickly. Fuel your car and fuel yourself. Pick up your favorite local snacks and ice cold drinks at your neighborhood Texaco today. Texaco at Techron, driving performance. Our guest today is a native Hawaiian linguist from the island of Kauai. He is an educator and translator who has taught at various universities in Hawaii, Tahiti, and New Zealand. This perpetuator of traditional Hawaiian language has taught Hawaiian studies, subjects on endangered, revitalization, and Tahitian language. His work on Neo-Hawaiian as a separate variety of Hawaiian has informed debate in Hawaiian language studies, as well as a broader issue in language revitalization. He has translated a number of books into Hawaiian, including The Hobbit, The Little Prince, Alice Adventures in Wonderland, and the Harry Potter series. He most recently finished a Hawaiian translation of the Chronicles of Narnia. I am so stoked he's here today. We're going to learn so much. His name is Keao NeSmith. Aloha, Keao. Welcome to the podcast here at iDate Studios. How are you doing?
Aloha no. Mahalo nui ke ia kono ana me iau.
Oh, hawali. Pea mai ne wai.
Me ke ino au. Mahalo. Pehea oi ke ila?
Oia mau ke ola nei.
Gotta get better than that.
Yeah. I'm honestly so stoked that you're here today. Mahalo for, getting back to me. I've been hearing about you for the last couple of years from my ohana, my dad, my brother, and then Maluhia States, Ka'alala on Instagram, who's a past guest. You're kind of just like a living legend. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, no. I can't be living and a legend.
Some people can because you're proving it right now. So we have a lot to get into, and I'm just really excited to learn because the way you speak Hawaiian and the way you learn Hawaiian is so different than the way I learned it. And people can hear it just from this beginning, how different we sound. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, I got to start at the beginning. Mai kinohi mai. Where are you from? Where you grad? And what was it like growing up?
I'm from Kaua'i, straight up. I'm a Kaua'i boy, born Waimea. Kaua'i, West Side, raised in Kekaha. last town on the west side. Or it is now. I mean, there used to be a village further down the road in Mana when I was a kid growing up. But I'm from west side Kaua'i, very Kaua'i inside and out. People who know me as that kind of gritty Kaua'i boy. So yeah, I went to elementary school, Keikaha, Waimea Canyon School, Waimea High School, for freshman year, and then I finished at Kamehameha over here at Honolulu.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. My mom said that because she went to boarding school over here too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. She said you were a freshman when she was a senior, I think.
for real?
I think so, yeah.
Who is this?
Cecily Robinson,
Oh my
Keakelani
gosh!
Robinson. She used to be Whittington.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's so funny. You know my whole family.
Yeah, mom and dad and brothers. Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, just a little backstory. My older brother, used to dance with Keal at one of the halaus on Oahu, and then my stepdad, Kaloa Robinson, used to work in Washington D.C. with Senator Akakas.
Yeah.
In his office, and then that's where you met him
This
too.
is too insane. First of all, shout out to Kumu Snowbird Bento,
Mhm.
Kapahulo, Kaleile Hua. Yeah, halau I love.
Mhm.
And your dad, I will never forget meeting your dad over there in Washington. He was out of control. He was out of control.
Yeah.
Awesome guy.
He was telling me on the phone right before this how amazed he was hearing you speak with your grandmother, because this was one of the first times he heard Hawaiian spoken conversationally.
It was
like
hilarious because he made me talk. And it was like 6 hours different. I would to wake up my grandma. Lucky my grandma already wakes up at 4:30 anyway in the morning. But he's I want to hear you talk. I was like, how can you talk? What you talking about? Here. I'll call your grandma. I was like, what? That's an expensive call. It's like, nah, it's on sanitary noise. It's all free.
That's so funny. So growing up on Kauai, were you always into the Hawaiian language, or did that come later in life?
As far as being into the Hawaiian language, like gravitating toward it, I would say yeah. But was I a speaker of it? No. It wasn't cool. There wasn't this, what it is today, this kind of excitement, movement, interest in Olelo Hawaii like you. And it wasn't a thing. It wasn't cool to be interested in Olelo Hawaii. If you were into Hawaiian culture, automatically people put you in the hula box. It's because of hula. And if you're a male, you must be mahu.
Yeah.
No, for real. That was no, but that wasn't my thing. That I was interested because I used to see in Kekaha, for instance, when I was a kid growing up, there were a lot of kupuna in my hometown and across Kauai who were kupuna at the time, not from Niihau, but Hawaiian speakers, Native Hawaiian speakers. And Ohana right across from our house is one example. The mom, Auntie Florence, Hawaiian speaker. She was always there when I was a little kid growing up. We love our neighbors. We're very close with our neighbors. But her husband, Filipino, could barely speak English. And so that was Auntie Florence and Uncle Ernesto Aluag. Down the road, there are 2, 3, 4 other families, same kind of situation, elderly, 60s, 70s years old, and Hawaiian speakers. And I used to just invite myself. I would still speak English, but I would gravitate to them because I'd be like, they had that grandma feel to them, to me. And so these are people I gravitate to and just kind of opihi myself up to. So that is what I take it when you say we're into Hawaiian. Was I a speaker? No. My own mom or dad? No. My mom is Hawaiian, my dad Haole. My mom grew up in an era in the mid-1900s where it was absolutely not cool to be into things Hawaiian, and especially Hawaiian language. You were thought of as, it was just thought of as, it was a marker of anything but intelligence. That was the association. My mom, my aunties and uncles, people of that generation in general, if you were into it, it was a sign of anything but intelligence. And now it's kind of swung the other way. but the baggage has really made it difficult for the new Hawaiian speakers of today to really represent that era of those native speakers because there's a huge gap in between.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, I came to pick up Olelo Hawaii part by hanging out with people who were Hawaiian speakers. And so it came gradually, but particularly when I was in my teenage years.
Okay. That's funny you bring up all that about how it wasn't cool, because I feel like I was at the tail end of that because I was born in the 90s. So, early 2000s, late 90s, it was still not very cool to do it because I remember it wasn't common at all. Because my dad only Hawaiian. I grew up with Hawaiian as my first language, so we only speak Hawaiian to my dad. So going to grocery stores or being at sports event where he's only speaking Hawaiian, I would get shamed.
Embarrassed, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to respond back to him in the grocery store because I didn't want everybody to look at me. I would get all hot and nervous. But nowadays it's like, oh, you want to shout it from your chest when you speak Hawaiian, right? Because that's the cool thing.
Not me.
Yeah.
I'm still to me, I just get in being conscious of the crowd and in a public space and stuff like that. For me personally, that's showing off.
Well, exactly. That's what it is today because of like social media and everything. Yeah. It's a party trick. It became cool to
however,
show off.
However, in my environment, you come to my environment, home, Kaua'i ke kaha, my neighbors and stuff. Even as I was growing up, it was normal to hear Niihau speakers yell across at each other in Hawaiian back then. That was normal back then. That's a different context.
Yeah.
And it's not the same. But to be here, Honolulu, anywhere else, you stand out like a sore thumb, right? But people are envious of it when they see, and it's true that it's kind of a show off. Funny stories. When I was living with my grandma, because I was going to Kamehameha over here, and my grandma lived in Hau'ula. And I would spend weekends there. And then during the summers, we'd spend lots of time with my grandma. And she would only speak Hawaiian to me. And I was picking up the speaking part. I picked up the comprehension part first. So she could tell me anything and I knew what she said, but I didn't know how to put the words together myself. That came gradually. And then we were able to go both ways only in Hawaiian. And only because of her influence and the influence of my Niihau friends and neighbors on Kaua'i and these other kupuna who are now all gone. She and I didn't have a car. We would catch the bus. So we would catch the bus. The bus was our only transportation. So we would go to the store, especially to town. She would like to do the Saturday, let's go to town thing. And we would crack jokes, just kick up me and grandma sitting on the bus. And when we're into our conversation, I'm not considering who else is around, but we're only speaking to each other in Hawaiian. And I'm perfectly comfortable. But sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of people watching and then I'll get real shame. I literally put my head down and shut up because I don't want this. I'd be like, stop looking. Because I want to carry on with my grandma, but I don't want people to notice. So it was more of a, keep it on the DL kind of a thing as far as I was concerned. Mind you, there was no immersion school at the time. It was not a concept. It was not a thing. And there was still this idea. Once in a while, there would be a random kupuna on the bus who would step off the bus and would tap almost every time. Like I could be sitting on the outside, my grandma's sitting on the inside, and they'll reach over me and tap my grandma on the shoulder and tell her, "Mahali ya ika wala au kau keiki, mikina," and then I'd be like, but my grandma would just laugh. Yeah, she'd, "Oh, okay, hikino." And people, she didn't know, I didn't know. So that was a thing. For me, the domain of Olelo Hawaii at that time was our yard. So as soon as we enter our yard at grandma's house, this was our Olelo Hawaii domain. Once I step out, I'll compartmentalize the Olelo Hawaii, stay over there. And at that time, I was actually picking up on Tahitian too.
How did you
Because
learn? Oh,
same. Hanging out with the Tahitian families over there, Ha'ula Laie,
oh, I didn't even know there's Tahitian family.
plenty.
Wow, you hear about the other Polynesian cultures. You don't. I feel like I never hear about Tahitian families.
Yeah. They're more like us. They're more
Mhm.
subdued. They're more like, oh,
Mm.
they're not outrageously overt. They're just more
Yeah.
very pleasant. And I was fascinated ever since I was a little kid. I was fascinated about Tahiti. I was like, and the first opportunities I ever came across, I latched onto the Olelo Tahiti thing, hanging out with them. First time I ever went to Tahiti, I was already fluent in Tahitian and zero French at the time, which is bizarre to the people in Tahiti. Yeah, I'll compartmentalize, now that you mention it, I'll compartmentalize all these different domains. So my Olelo Hawaii was strictly grammar, my Niihau friends growing up. And on Kaua'i, I would spend many days just at my Niihau friends' houses, Pakala, Kaumakani, Kekaha, hanging out with them till nighttime, carrying on. And that's how I came to pick up on the Niihau side. Versus my grandma's side, she's from Ka'u and Puna. And so I go back and forth. And then you misstep sometimes.
Mhm.
So there are definite words my Niihau friends use that my grandma wouldn't use, and vice versa. So once in a while, like I'll be in Ha'ula and then I'll go home, Kaua'i, and then come back and my brain would still be half Niihau. And I would spit out a word and then my grandma would look at me and she goes, and then vice versa, back on Kaua'i, I would spit out a word that my grandma uses and my Niihau friends would go, and laugh. And then I would go, like that.
It gets confusing. I struggled with that too when I learned Spanish right before I finished college, and then I went to Madagascar right after. So I learned Spanish, I was learning Malagasy, and I still knew Hawaiian. So I would confuse a lot of the languages together sometimes. Sometimes it would be like a Spanglish or like Mala Spalagasi, whatever, however you want to say.
Spalagasi.
And like instead of
Sounds like a delicious dish.
It does, yeah. But sometimes that would really trip me up. And even when I came back, like I think it just happened as recently as like last week when I was speaking with my dad in Hawaiian, and then I wanted to use a Malagasy word, and then I had to pause for a second and think, okay, wait, actually, what's the Hawaiian word? Okay. And then I went forward. But it gets confusing when you have all these different languages.
Well, you learn to
head.
compartmentalize, and it's a good skill, actually. It's good to be a multitasker and to compartmentalize. And certain people are better at it than others, and certain people take it to extremes more so than especially me. And I'm always impressed with that, with you. I'm seriously. I lived in Texas for a little bit. I picked up on Spanish. By the time I left, I was able to do store transactions and stuff in Spanish by the time I left, but I didn't carry it on here. But I was fascinated with Spanish. I wanted to. Well, I ended up picking up French. So
French is hard. The pronunciation is hard.
Yeah, once you get a hang of it, there's a logic to it. There is no logic when you're beginning, but then you kind of get it. And I still mess up the masculine, feminine. Why does that even exist? No, I'll never know. But I enjoy very much. When I lived in New Zealand, I picked up Maori to the extent where, kind of like when I was living with grandma and she would talk to me anything and I knew what she was saying. That's kind of where I'm at with Maori.
Okay.
So I cannot really speak. I can say a few things. I can carry on up to a certain limit and then dance around the rest of it and then just not participate for the rest of the time. But it became a necessary skill because when I lived in New Zealand, I don't know how many pofiris I've been through. You know, the ceremony, the greeting ceremony. I always was pegged as the lead man to stand up and go. I'm like, great guys, but I was forced to pick up the ability to understand what was going on, and then it became a much more social thing. 1 beer, 2 beer, 3 beers fluent. You know?
That's what people would say when I was learning with the other Peace Corps volunteers. Is once they have a couple beers, they get more confident and their Malagasy gets
it
better.
kind of loosens the springs, I think, in your jaw. You know.
I don't drink, so I also had to get to that point naturally.
Yeah. Well, it helps the fear factor,
Yeah.
a little bit. But then I take it seriously at the same time. So it could be having a moment of levity, but at the same time, it's also very serious to me. It's a big deal.
Mhm.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So how did you end up where you're at now as like a Hawaiian linguist? I want to say expert. I'm not sure if you consider yourself an expert. To me, in my eyes, you're an expert. We don't have to put labels on it, but I'm just saying that's how I perceive it.
Okay.
So how did you get to that point to where you decided to kind of make this your life?
First of all, I guess on the expert point, I get it. But when I'm home in Kekaha, I'm the idiot. I'm the dummy in the room, relative to my Niihau friends and family. I look at them and I'm envious of their life, that this is their first language. And just to remind everyone, our po'e Niihau, seriously, are not English speakers. Not. And I've come to be able to participate in that linguistic community today. And one job I have right now is I do live interpreting. Doesn't matter, courtroom, for other purposes, stuff like that. But I have specified Niihau only in my case, because just a few weeks ago, I was in the ICU at the hospital, communicating between Niihau family and the doctor and the staff, because they seriously do not speak English and do not understand what's being said. And so that's a life-threatening need. And that's a role that I play. And even in those situations, and I've facilitated other scenarios where there was something legal involved, that I had to help facilitate the communication back and forth between our Niihau ohana and whoever else was in there. So as far as the expert, I get it, but I have my own experts as well. But I'm happy to fluctuate between roles. And then you had a particular question that you wanted to ask, and I wasn't touching on just now.
Like how did you get into like being where you're at and decide to
Yeah,
go into
to me
that
it
route?
was more like that. Now I appreciate I was aware. So when I went to Kamehameha, Olelo Hawaii was a thing. I was fascinated with Japanese, so I did Japanese. Lived in Japan for a summer working and stuff, and I did nothing but Japanese language when I was in high school, and I was obsessed with Japanese. I was that nerd that did the extra. I was doing second year material in first year Japanese, and meeting with the sensei after schools and stuff like that, studying kanji. That was me, and Hawaiian was not a thing in my brain. Studying Hawaiian was never a thing. I never wanted to. It existed. The teacher at the time, I'm not going to drop names, but wanted me in that class. And I run the opposite way every time I saw her coming around. And she had me like on her radar, and she would chase me and I would head off the other direction. I did not want it. I wasn't interested. I already had grammar. I didn't need it. I didn't think I needed it. I had my community, I had my friends, my ohana, and then there's grandma. Grandma to me is my universe. She's my everything. I was like, I'm good. Leave me alone. I got grandma. She's the real deal. And I just did Japanese. So like I said before, everything was compartmentalized. So after I finished Kamehameha, then I went straight to go live with grandma because I was going to BYU at the time. and working at the Polynesian Culture Center. And where I was working inside the PCC, we even had some kupuna my grandma's age who were native speakers. And if I wasn't at home talking with grandma, then I was at work talking with these guys, and they were native speakers. So there was that continuity. And then if I wasn't on Oahu, I was on Kaua'i. And where was I? Home in Kekaha with my neighbors, my Niihau friends, and all these kupuna. So there was that continuity there.
So you never actually took a class in Hawaiian?
Never. And I had zero desire. I knew it existed at UH, but I was like, nah, that's not for me. I'm not interested. But I did a couple of years BYU, and then I went and saw the world and did my thing. Then I came back and I, said to myself, I got to finish college. I said I would, and I'm going to do this because I said I would. And so I chose to go to UH Hilo. Of course, there's a long story in between, but then I ended up at UH Hilo, and I said, I'm going to do this. I just committed myself to it. Okay, I'm going to do it. And that's the first time I stepped into a classroom where there was formal instruction in the Hawaiian language. I found it very, quite a foreign experience, really.
Who was your teacher back then?
Well, mahalo to Pilo Wilson, really, who walked me through the whole getting into university. And I was nervous and excited at the same time because I thought, okay, I mean, it's a new sort of community for me. And I had just met these people. So there was, and Larry was really the guide who helped me get in through this whole thing and took me under his wing in certain ways. And then he introduced me to the rest of the faculty. But yet at the same time, it was quite a foreign experience. So it was, there was resistance in my na'au to things that I was observing that were going on. And then there was big acceptance in my na'au of particular things that was going on at the time. So I really came away with having a new perspective that was entirely different to the experience that I had already come from with just grandma, just my ohana, just my friends from Niihau.
Mm-hmm. I guess what makes me really curious about your upbringing is because I had the whole childhood of learning in the classroom, but also just speaking at home with my dad, and then living abroad where you're immersed in the language, where you can learn the grammar and everything in the classroom structure and whatever. It's super helpful. But the real practice is done at the home, at the market, when you're just talking stories with the aunties and uncles.
And it's for that exact same reason that I think the opposite from you. I think the laser focus analysis on the grammar was not helpful because it takes away from the real language, from the real nitty gritty, the nuances in language. It took away from that. It was a separate study than nuanced language. It's separate than native speaker talk.
Yeah.
And if that is the avenue to create a new community of only laser focused grammarians, there was a that was the part that I resisted in the classroom experience. So I was like, I'm not subscribing to your
diacritical
I don't
marks.
know. Yeah, your anal retentive attention to the grammar structure. I was like, can you keep that to yourself? I'd rather be more natural and fluid, and I don't, whatever, because there are these little things that you toss into there that reflect your mood at any given split second. That doesn't come across from textbook language. And how can you, like you were just saying, how can you teach those nuances from a textbook? You can't. You have to get that in a very real scenario, you can talk about transactions in a store. You can talk about the marketplace. You can talk about hanging out with people just like this.
Yeah.
And this is where mood comes across. I mean, who knows? We might be arguing in the next minute, and that's a change in mood. And we might discover that there's somebody else close in our lives that we both know, and that'll take us in another excited mood. well, there are these nuances in the way you utter your voice, the way the little particle words that you throw into there that interject, emphasize your mood at any given moment. That doesn't come across from a textbook. That you get that from the real world experience.
Yeah. And I think I appreciate the more colloquial conversations a little bit more than like the textbook. I feel like what I notice when I speak languages, I'm so hyper focused on the grammar that I want to be perfect. I want to say it so they think that I get a 99 or 100 on the exam.
Scale. Yeah.
Where when you're speaking, even if you think about it, when you speak English, you don't say everything correctly. I use was and were, is and are wrong all the time.
Yeah. But there are rules to breaking the rules. We break the rules as English speakers in the same way. I do it the same way you do it the same way I do. And then all of our English speaking community, we break the rules doing the same thing. We know when to stick to the rules, like certain scenarios, writing a paper, presenting yourself as a PR, exercise. That's when all of us, we agree there's an unspoken rule as to when. So that's register, yeah? So register is when you switch between moods. And that's more of that theoretical side of analyzing, not language, analyzing meaning and comprehension and what do you call competency.
Yeah. I also notice when I'm learning these other languages and I'm speaking with others, like local native speakers, they don't say a lot of the things you learn in the classroom. Like you're learning how to speak so properly sometimes, and they're like, we don't actually say it like that. We just say it like this. I guess it's more, they speak in more idioms, and like I say,
right. And just a few days ago, I was talking about, I've been invited to come and actually teach Olelo Hawaii to a couple of local organizations, not school oriented, it's just local businesses. And so I'm presenting the language, and one particular example that we touched on just a couple of days ago was Owai Kaua'i noa, and this insistence that you must say Okeao Kaua'i noa. And I actually made it a point to say, that's correct, but nobody says that. Nobody says that. That's not native speaker talk. When somebody says Owai Kaua'i noa to me, the answer is Keal. That's the answer. What's your name? My name is Keal. Who says that?
Yeah, exactly.
Who says that? That's not, yes, it's textbook language. Is it correct? Yes. Do people actually do that? Rarely, not zero, but rarely. Same is true in Hawaiian. So this insistence that you must answer the question, Owai Kaua'i noa with Okeao Kaua'i noa is the most unnatural and not reflective of the real world type language you could ever say. And the textbook does not teach you otherwise. So that's what I was saying earlier about nuance.
I can also tell where people learn Hawaiian from.
Yeah, me too. Easy. It's easy. It's so obvious.
Oh, you learned that.
Not only that, I can tell when people are saying Hawaiian words, but their thinking is exactly English, like the way it's coming out. Mahalo no ke ka'ana like ana mai I kou inoa. You just said, thank you for sharing your thoughts. That was just English. That's called masking. You're masking English. And that is entirely, you may have spat out Hawaiian words, but that was English. And that needs to stop. But how do you become a Hawaiian thinker if you never associate with actual native speakers? So that's why when I came, so here are the University Hawaiian and that community of classroom educators and learners. And then here I come from this world of just native speakers, just like how you picked up, from meeting with people, associating, and then merging somewhere in the middle. I've come to realize over the years that my political attitudes toward the whole issues likewise diverge. So I don't share many of the same political views about the whole Olelo Hawaii phenomenon that's going on today. with those who do come from the university, the immersion school, the classroom experience. And for example, I don't agree that we have to write with Okina and Kahako. To me, that's amateur. It's baby talk. It's training wheels. One is called Okina, one is called Kahako. Who keeps their training wheels the whole rest of their life? No, you toss them away. If native speaker talk represents the bar that we're all trying to reach, they don't use Okina Kahako. So go there, you know, use the Okina and Kahako as aids to get you there only, but why hold on to them when it's unnecessary, So I don't share that political view that you must use Okina Kahako all the time. To me, it's amateur, it's baby talk.
Yeah, that's something that I recently noticed in the last couple of years since following Maluhia, and even some other friends like Brad Watanabe from the Green. He doesn't use Okina and Kahakos.
Nice.
And for me, it's like it's so hard for me to not put it because my whole life is indoctrination, right? Just Okina Kahako. If you don't have
you were
it,
never told anything different.
Exactly, but then when I understand the perspective of like the Bible, like the New Pepa, there was no Okina and Kahakos written.
Yeah.
So, and Hawaiian is not even a written language. It was always an oral language.
Well, if you go back far enough, yeah.
Yeah, but the reason that it was Okina and Kahakos and everything was put in was so that other people could learn, right?
Well, yes, but the other and only since 1957. In the 1800s, the field of linguistics didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. So this idea of doing those marks in a systematic way wasn't a thing at all. It didn't. That emerged towards the back end of the 1800s. So it didn't exist in the 1820s when by committee voted on the. That's one thing I regret as well of what happened back then. And shout out to Poki'i Seto and his PhD work. Because we need solid thinkers who think that, well, if we kind of regret, you might say in a certain sense, that back in the 1820s when they settled on the Hawaiian alphabet without Okina and without Kahako, that the alphabet itself was not a true representation of our language. So the Niihau language today, where you have K and T, you have the L pronunciation and the Spanish R pronunciation. That was representative of the language of the era, 1820s. And it was by this committee of foreigners who went, how many of you want to go only K? Okay, 7 raised their hand. How many of you want T? And 6 raised their hand. Well, the 7 won.
That's how it was decided?
Yes. And then
that's the reason we don't use T's. And
you never know that.
No.
And then how many of you want L? And the L's raised their hand. How many of you want the Spanish R? Because they knew that they were the same thing. And one less raised the hand. And so the L won. And how many wanted a V? And how many wanted the W? Well, the concession was, or the agreement was, we'll stick with W, but know that it can be pronounced like a V, like in German.
So that's why it's like Hawaii or Hawaii.
Yeah.
Hawaii, vai.
And my grandma, Niihau speakers, you're fluid. There's no one way to do it. And it annoys me that through the classroom and majority of my colleagues who are teachers of Hawaiian in classrooms insist that it must be pronounced like a V. That's annoying to me. It's annoying. It must always be V. No, that's not true. It's not a true representation of how native speakers talk. So I'm disappointed that back then these choices were made. Why did they do that? Why did they have a vote? Because we needed to publish the Bible. So I don't appreciate the new release of the Hawaiian Bible with all the Okina and Kahako in there. I don't appreciate it. I don't need it. For one thing, I can read perfectly fine without it. I have a few copies of the what I call the real Hawaiian Bible, which is the earlier editions that don't have Okina Kahako. Once in a while, you have the apostrophe. Keep that in mind. There's a difference between kou and ko'u, right? So that apostrophe, ko'u, had always been there since the 1820s to distinguish ko'u, no. So there's that. And I don't appreciate the new edition of the Hawaiian Bible with Okinakako. It's not necessary. And some of the decisions that were made in certain words, I don't agree with. I don't agree that ho'o wawaha is one example that comes to mind. No, my grandma, native speakers, Niihau people, this word, you pronounce it ho'o wawaha, but waha, to like, not scold, kind of like scold, but when you gas somebody, yeah, you nail somebody with your talk, ho'o wawaha. But I'm aware that in the Pukui Albert Dictionary, that word is ho'o waha waha with kahako, and that's bizarre to me. I don't know why. And I wasn't there to understand. I've never heard any native speakers say ho'o waha waha, but they go for that because it was there. I've never heard a native speaker say that. And that's just one example. There are other examples of word choices that were made when creating the Okinakahako versions of text. And yet here I am, being a hypocrite, doing Harry Potter and all this with what? Okinakahako. Why did I do that? I made a conscious decision to meet my readership halfway. I wouldn't normally agree by myself for if I knew that I could make all the choices and make all the rules and stuff like that. I would try and mimic that style of native speaker writing that you might see that came across from the 1800s into the 1900s, because that represents the bar. That's the bar. This is how native speakers write and read and how they pronounce. If you really needed the Okinakako, I'm sorry, you're an amateur. You're still learning.
I think maybe we're just not there yet.
Yeah, we're not. And I agree with you on that. We're not there yet.
So much has been lost.
And therefore, I made this agreement with myself that I'm going to give everybody a solid, and just meet them halfway and just go ahead and do this. And if you're going to do it, you have to be consistent. You cannot be flip-flopping halfway through. You got to stay consistent because there's logic involved. Yeah. So, I don't want to confuse my readers.
Yeah. It's such an interesting debate too, because for me, like, I don't need the Okina and Kakos because I can understand. And like, my dad learned from the Baibala Hemulele and like going to church and speaking with the Manaleos over there. So it's not necessary. Like, we don't always have to put it, but it's really just my Kayapuni side that makes me do it.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to decide how I want to do it, but I think eventually, like you said, this is the pinnacle. This is the goal of where we want to be as native speakers. Eventually, then hopefully none of us will have to do it because we all understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're just not there yet.
We're not there yet. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people that I come across, if I come to know, or if I do know that they can handle like this conversation entirely in Hawaiian, I feel zero need to use Okinakako. I'm assuming that you can. But there are those who, similarly to us, we engage with each other, and then I'll do the writing to them in an email or in a text or whatever without Okinakako, but they, like you, feel they cannot let go of the Okinakako. They must use Okinakako. And I read the text and sometimes I'll laugh. I was like, sometimes I'll be like, seriously, guy, you didn't need that. So it has its place.
For sure. Yeah. And so since we're on the topics of these differences, Niihau is such a unique and special place that's different than the other islands. It's one of those places that I feel is like a mythical place that I know nothing about. I know there's Native Hawaiian speakers. I know it's owned by the Robinson family, and you can only go there if you have permission. And those are like the OGs of the Hawaiian language. But I know nothing about it. And then when I try to tell people, because first of all, not a lot of people know the real history about Hawaii. Not a lot of people know that Hawaiian language is a language. And then when they hear Hawaiian, they don't know what actual Hawaiian sounds like. So I have to, there's layers of this that I have to
Layers.
explain to people. Like even today when I was saying, oh yeah, this guy's coming and he's like, he speaks like a native speaker. And I have to explain it to him. I'm like, okay, so like when I say it, like I'm going to say a sentence and then you can say what I'm saying, how you say it. Like, e hele ana wau I ke kākai, mamake oe e hele me a'u?
Whoa, iho na kakai mo ke hele.
You see? And I just said like, I'm going to go to the beach. You want to come with me? You see how different that sounds? And also like you even shorten it too, where you got the context of what I'm trying to say. And then it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's just totally different.
Yeah, it's context. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so how did it end up becoming so different? And why were we not taught to try to emulate the native speakers?
Because the way you said it was very straight up textbook. E hele ana hele, right? But actually remember that kakai is over there and this is mauka, that's makai. It's directional. So normally a native speaker would say iho instead of hele. Hele, okay. I mean, it's not wrong. But the natural inclination is iho. Whoa, iho kakai. Whoa. So verb, subject, object. E iho ana wau. But native speaker talk, same like English talk, we don't follow that rule necessarily. You do parenthetical stuffs. So the stuff at the back, wau, comma, iho no ikai. Because I'm putting a certain emphasis on what I'm doing. And that's a meaning-centered approach to language. So, wo iho nui kakai. My grandma would talk like that. Niihau people talk like that. It's a native speaker way of thinking. Make oe hele. Mamake, because you and I, this isn't a formal relationship. It's informal. So mamake is perfectly fine. You said make, which is a textbook. That's what's there in the textbook. And I regret that the majority of classroom teachers today of Hawaiian language think that they have to stick to that. Make. That is so unnatural and not how real Hawaiian is treated. It's mamake unless otherwise specified. And they're coming from the other approach from the textbook in reinforcement that no, it must be make and don't do mamake.
I've been doing mamake.
Okay.
Recently.
But I'm talking about across the years and with all of my associations and stuff. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's an oversimplification, really. So don't take what I'm saying too seriously, really. But and it's an overgeneralization at the same time. So that's my disclaimer right there. But and then make o e hele mea'u. The mea'u part that's a given. It wasn't necessary because we already know what's going on. And again, that's a way to get at what's going on in the mind of a native speaker. And that's the universe, is that mind. And so as a malihini, and you can be native Hawaiian, I don't care how much Hawaiian you 100%. If you're not speaking Hawaiian, you're not in there. You're not there. So getting into that universe, that mind of any native speaker, English, coming from any other country into English, any other language circle, into the English mind. How many times have we come across people who are picking up English and make these kinds of similar mistakes? I mean, you said, I understood what you said, but that's not really how we would say it. I remember in Tahiti, when I was living there at university, I was going down the hallway and a classroom was here, and it was an English class. Now, people don't speak English in Tahiti, it's French. So the teacher is teaching English. Everyone is French speakers, but they're trying to learn English. And I'm passing by and I casually hear the teacher go, "Repeat after me. How do you do?" And everybody went, "How do you do?" I just boss laugh outside, like fully spontaneous. I just bus laugh outside and it was loud and everybody went and right as I was passing the door and oh shit, I was all ashamed. But I carried on and I dived into the closest room over there. I had to bust. I was so embarrassed at the same time. Why was that funny? Was it wrong? No. Who says, how do you do? No one. No one. That's what's happening with Hawaiian today in classroom settings.
Oh, that's so interesting because it makes me think about my time in Madagascar. There's a phrase that kids would always get wrong because they would translate "what's up," like "what's up." They would in Malagasy they'll say "inuna ni vau," which is like "what is new." So in English they'll say "what's news" instead of "what's up."
Got it.
So we would always have to explain it to them.
Yeah.
We were saying "what's up," but the way you said in Malagasy, it's like what's the news, but you don't say what's the news.
Yeah. Well, the same is true today because English speakers are coming into Hawaiian language. They're bringing all the English baggage with them, and that's where ila mai ka'i comes from, which I am irritated that this has become a norm for the immersion school crowd to end the conversation by saying, ila mai ka'i. No one says that. No one says that.
Yeah.
No native speaker has ever said that. Stop it. Stop it. Ho'opau na wala au. Ila mai ka'i. Nobody says that. Ali po e wala au mikin na. And that shows your haole. That shows your English. And that shows your mind. So where you're coming from. Stop it, everyone. Stop it.
That's so funny. I keep trying to stop myself from doing that. I just said that recently. Ila mai kai. And then I think back, I'm like, oh, why did I say it?
That is not Hawaiian.
I've heard these things too.
I don't care. That's called masking. You're masking English with Hawaiian words. That is not true. And so is this live?
No, I mean it's pre-recorded, but yeah, we don't cut everything out.
I don't mind necessarily. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No. Say everything.
No, I don't mind. Yes. Because if you catch me one-on-one, I will say stop it. The other one, I mean, there are so many. That are just English baggage is all it is that carries over. But can I or anyone else blame anyone for having this English baggage? And you have to say no. How can I? Because we were denied through the 1900s that opportunity to be raised by native speakers, straight up, like Niihau. So to me, that Niihau family environment is the bar. That is the bar. I don't care. And I have this attitude of I don't care because I'm aware that colleagues of mine who are second language speakers, new speakers, really denigrate the Niihau community and the way they speak Hawaiian.
Why? Yeah. To me, I think that it's so cool. Those are like the godfathers.
Mahalo.
I wanna no. I'm so serious when I say this because I have conversations like this with my dad, and we talk about like the Leo Hawaii because he's like he learned from those people. So he like his Hawaiian's way better than ours. He uses a lot of like words from the Bible and old words and like even idioms and whatever, like kaukalai kololo, like stuff like that. And I really want to get to that point, but I've been speaking this way for 30 years and it's so hard to just change and stop. That's like the hardest thing for me is because it's my life. It's like normal for me.
Yeah.
And I feel fraudulent when I'm trying to say it instead of like my kai, I'm like Mikei. I just feel that feels weird.
I understand where
like
that
pua.
I understand where that's coming from. I totally understand where it's coming from. After having been introduced to the whole world of new speakers, the new speakers after having gone to UH Hilo and all them, I've become a part of that larger community of people just trying to do it, just trying hard. Everybody's trying hard. And this is our result. The situation we're in right now, even these things that we're touching on right now, is a result of our history. And our history is nobody's fault. History is not a thing to fault. History is a result. So we are at the back end of all of this damage that had occurred through the 1900s, having been denied through shame, our grandparents, great-grandparents, that caused them to believe that in order to survive we must reject the Hawaiian language and consider it dumb and consider English superior. And that was the fault of the U.S. occupation, straight up. So the shame belongs with the USA. That's where the shame belongs, not with us. It doesn't belong with us. We struggle with these topics. We struggle with these little pet peeves, and it's a struggle. And if there is shame, it's misplaced in any way. Like if it, you should never feel shame for feeling awkward about saying meka'i versus maikai. If there is shame, it's a misplaced shame. It doesn't belong with you. It belongs with the instigator. That's where the shame belongs properly. So we're dealing. So I've come over the past couple of decades to the mind where just document the hell out of what's going on right now. And this is documentation right here. So document the hell out of what's going on and make sure that we place the blame squarely where it properly belongs. And yeah, Yankee go home. Seriously, Yankee going home isn't going to solve the problem either, because it will have left us with the mess to clean up. So, and this is what we're doing. So it is doing what it's doing. Nothing that I say is necessarily going to change anything. It's going to do what it's going to do because a linguistic community is a beast without form. It's a beast without a body, and it's a domain without borders. There's no controlling it. It's just going to do what it's going to do. And by pure momentum, you're talking about the majority are going to follow this thing. And earlier you talked about layering. So you got native speaker talk, that native speaker mind that I was talking about. My grandma belongs in there. All these kupuna who are not from Niihau. And then you have the Niihau community who are native speakers, and they share a high percentage of brain as even my grandma. But then they have their particular variety of the Hawaiian language, and then that's another variety. Here we are on the new speakers side, having come out of classroom experience, textbook experience, and saying mai ka'i and make all the time. Then there's that community of the new speakers. Then within that realm, there are subdivisions too. I can point out for you some of the distinctions between how the new speakers over at Kauai Kini School on Kaua'i are using language versus on Nui versus what's happening on Maui versus what's happening at Navahi, where I taught. And so it isn't simply, first of all, let's all agree, there isn't one Hawaiian language anymore. That is straight up. There is no one Hawaiian language anymore. You have this big swath of varieties of Hawaiian. And then even among the new speakers, you got varieties again. Yeah. One that really kills me is me'ole. It comes to mind, me'ole without.
I never heard that before.
I have, and it's so bizarre without, like, without how we use it in English. So we can't do this without that. And they'll actually say me'ole. And then I came across listening to one of the old audio clips, recordings of actual native speakers, kupuna, talking from might have been the 80s or 70s. And the kupuna said me'ole.
What?
Yeah.
I know, like meka ole o ke kahimea, but I never heard of me'ole.
No.
So wait, so that's correct?
No, not at all.
Oh, but then it goes far
So
back.
here's a nuance. Here's another nuance. Like a gem like that, which I'd never heard. And then I heard a bunch of new speakers recently, in recent years, say that. And I'm like, me'ole, the heck are you talking about? And then they come all shame. It's oh, that's how we say it. Well, stop saying that. That's me. That's me being me. Well, stop saying that. No, that's not. And then I heard this one recording later, and I went, no, it doesn't mean that it's correct necessarily, but you and I were just talking about how we break the rules all the time in English. And just because that one kupuna say, I've known many kupuna, many native speakers across my lifetime. And I can tell you that that one example is so rare. And it's an example of new speakers latching on to something that is such a rare phenomenon that has blown up into this massively popular thing to do among this set of new speakers. And then new speaker, and then here's my colleague and my other colleague, all new speakers, all equally unstable, all equally unsure of themselves, heard each other say a thing and the other will catch on and run with it.
Yeah. Sounds like what we've done is we've made the exception the rule instead of the exception to the rule.
Straight up.
So we made instead of like, oh, that's the exceptions to the rule. That's not the rule. We heard that one exception and we latched onto that. And we're like, and now it has become the rule.
Yeah. And as we're talking, certain things are firing off like examples. And one that's hitting me right now is kamea ea, the other thing. That's grammatically wrong to say kamea ea in that context. Because for example, my grandma would talk about when she was young, she would say stuff like, ho'mapu no ko'u poe tutu, ku'ia nakapui, elua no au au, noho no ke kei kanaka ke kei au au ku'ia nakapui, noho no ke kei kanaka ma ke kei au au, ku'ia nakapui. But in that same scenario, many colleagues of mine are ka'au au ea. That is grammatically wrong. Stop it. And when you look at Pila Wilson's textbook, he actually has a section in there, and I had to do an analysis of the text of certain textbooks for my PhD research. And he actually points out that saying kamea ea is grammatically wrong. He says it in his text. And then you have Hokulani Cleland's Hawaiian language textbook, and he says exactly the same thing. Avoid saying kamea ea, it's wrong. But yet in Olelo Oiwi, no, sorry, that's Hokulani Cleland's book, Kalei Ha'aheo.
Which is a popular book that people learn.
Very popular, numerically very popular. Among the most widely used, unfortunately. And it uses kamea ea as if it is correct.
How do we know these things if we don't have conversations like this?
I only know what I know because I come from this whole background, my growing up years, my formidable years. And then when I started to, I was already, college age when I first came across people who were saying kamea ea, and ever since the first time I heard it, it struck me like, did you just say that?
Would it be fair to classify all these different ways of speaking as just dialects?
No, it's just wrong.
It's just wrong.
But wrong, okay, our English is wrong all the time. But we all agree. It's just that you cannot compare what's happening with the English-speaking world, English-speaking communities, because obviously there's more than one English. What's happening in the UK is its own thing. What's happening in Australia is its own thing. And what's happening in the US is a thing. And what's happening in Hawaii among English speakers is its own thing too. And as we said earlier, casually speaking, that register, we break rules all the time. And actually, an informed linguist, a competent linguist, would never agree that we break rules. We move together as a linguistic community. And then we switch register freely. And that's a true sign of your competence and your intelligence and your emotional intelligence, really. To be able to know this, that's quite a bit different than what we're talking about here, because we're talking about being new speakers. And there's a lot of denial out there about, I'm a new speaker, okay? I'm an English speaker, and I've come to be a Hawaiian speaker through the classroom experience and through, let's be honest, people, let's be honest. You're still an English speaker. And that whole, everything that's happening inside your brain, your mind, you're trying. Give credit to yourself for that trying, but also be honest with the world and yourself that I don't quite got it right. That's a different thing than what's happening with the English speaking world, of which we can fully participate as competent English speakers about this whole conversation about breaking rules and then knowing when to stick to the rules. That isn't necessarily true for what's happening in the Hawaiian speaking world today. It's more, we're not there yet. We haven't been there. And who knows if we'll ever get there. I'm also getting the feeling right now, us just having my own look across the Hawaiian speaking world, new speaker world today, that I kind of do think that even with the Hawaiian that we got going on with all the immersion schools and everything, it'll always stay that second language that belongs over there. While I fully am a participant of the English speaking world. And it'll always stay there as that second language.
And they actually classify some ways of teaching as teaching English as a foreign language, teaching English as a second language. So when I was in Madagascar, I taught English as a foreign language. So over here, I guess maybe if we were to classify, we're teaching English as, we're teaching Hawaiian as a second language over like a first language. How
new language for sure. So that's another discussion that's happening in the linguistics world is using the term second language. Is that really true? I mean, people perceive second in that context differently. So new language seems to be more easily digestible as what we're trying to get at, this point that you're trying to make. New language, okay, because you can be a native speaker of a language and then acquire another language, but then you can also acquire another language and you can also acquire another language. I know several people who speak multiple languages. Each one of those is their second language. If you're going to call it their second and then third and then fourth, that changes the meaning, because when you say third language, you mean you came from one language, then you acquired this other language, and then from there you learn that other language. That could be third. But if you come from back to that same language and then learn just another language, that's also second. So you got 2 seconds. You know what I mean? So the perception of second language isn't self-evident necessarily. So new language, okay, because they can all be new, and it didn't matter which language you acquired it from. And what I mean by that is somebody can be an immigrant to here from another country, and then after coming here, picking up English and then go to class and learn Japanese. You know, so you came from one language, came to this other language, and from that new language community, you also study language. So it can get complicated.
Yeah. Well, what about just looking at it as just an evolution of Hawaiian, just like how there's the old Britannic English, like, you know, you see in the old movies or TV shows that you watch. And now we have the English of today, which, you know, we have here in the United States, in Australia and whatever, Ireland, like people speak differently. Is Hawaiian going down that same path where it's just an evolution of Hawaiian?
Not at all. Entirely not the same story.
Okay.
So the story of English has happened amongst a community of native speakers of English. So that evolution you're talking about is more the same conversation, the same parallel that you can draw with today's Samoan.
Okay.
They never lost it.
Okay.
Us English speakers never lost it. Samoan speakers had never lost it.
Yeah.
So for a language that was actually lost, the other parallels that more parallel with the Hawaiian scenario is, say, Gaelic in Scotland. Breton, which is a language in the west of France. And Irish, kind of, in a way, I would say. But there are other languages out there that some Native American linguistic communities are kind of in that same category as what's happening with the Hawaiian language. We lost it. We lost it, guys. And so we cannot say that what's happening now is that same evolution that has occurred with the English language. I've heard many apologists among the new Hawaiian speaking community, immersion school colleagues of mine at universities, say, but every language evolves. No, no, that's not what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't what's going on here. Be real. Um, this was a language that was lost and is being retrieved by a committee of English speakers. So the Lexicon committee, which I was a member, I can tell you straight up, no, it's a committee of English speakers creating, inventing new language that is entirely unintelligible to native speakers. So it's a project of inventing new language out of an English mind. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not the same thing as the story of English. In the English speaking world, nobody cares that a new word is introduced that is actually a Spanish word or French or even a Hawaiian word. How many Hawaiian words appear in the Webster dictionary? I think something like 200. It's a lot. And even stuff you wouldn't think, but they've appropriated and nobody cares amongst English speakers. But it's the new speakers who are on an active program to invent language. And by doing that, you're at the same time inventing a brand new Esperanto that the native speakers have zero intelligibility.
Mm.
So yeah, I had to testify in the legislature the state legislature, on this very point, because there is this idea out there, and I'm a translator, so I get hired to do a lot of translation for state agencies, private businesses, stuff like that. There's this assumption by those who charge me with the job of translating that there's only one Hawaiian. And I constantly have to tell them, who's my audience? If it's for our native speakers, like from the Department of Health, that is life or death. I have to write for the Niihau community, who I just told you a little while ago, do not understand what doctors are saying. So I have to be there to facilitate comprehension. So if I'm going to be translating these documents, COVID, perfect example, disasters, what just happened on Maui, hurricanes that occur, things like that, landslides on Kaua'i, that cut off an entire section of the island from the rest of the world. These kinds of life and death scenarios, my audience is the native speaker. I don't care about the Lexicon committee and the immersion schools. I'm so sorry, immersion schools, not to disparage. That isn't my point. But you're English speakers. All of the material the state provides in English, you perfectly understand because you're English speakers. Niihau community, I have to write to their comprehension. And I get pushback almost all the time. No, I'm so sorry, but you have to write immersion school talk. And I push back again. I will not. Because this is life and death. And all these new words and new ways of speaking, ila, maikai, and then all this other stuff is unintelligible to a native speaker. I will write to a native speaker audience primarily, but I always give them an out. But I'll provide a second version for you. I always do this without extra charge. I'll provide a second version for you, but version 1 is for our native speakers because they need it for comprehension. Our second language speakers, perfectly fluent in English, can read all of your English language material perfectly fine and even better than any Hawaiian translation. But here's your solid. It is the job of today's government administration to remedy the problem that this same government administration mucked up throughout the whole 1900s. So I'm on board with that political point, but that's a political point, not a linguistic point. So I compartmentalize what is the need. So when I get asked to do a translation, one of my first questions is, who am I writing this for? And so if it's for the immersion schools, I am fully aware that everyone involved in the immersion school project is an English speaker. And they came into Hawaiian and really understand English better than Hawaiian. But it is absolutely true, 100%, that the reason why we engage the Hawaiian is just and moral and legitimate, and I support that 100%. So I will write to that. But when I use Hawaiian in my translations, I'm not using Mamaka Kaiau language at all. It's not necessary. I think I made there are a few words that you can count on one hand that I did use that came from Mamaka Kaiau in my translations, but I've never needed them.
So what do you do when you don't know a word in Hawaiian?
Like what?
For example, let's say a new word like social media.
Yeah, you see, what does earlier I was talking about in the English speaking world, we appropriate words from other linguistic communities all the time because it's convenient and nobody gives a rip. I don't care that it came from that other language. So in the Niihau speaking community today, who are a modern Hawaiian native speaker, their families had never lost the language at any time, at any generation. And how do they handle social media? Oi, ako may naoimiyahan na social media.
They just use the English word.
What's wrong with that? You know, and people who insist that Saimin must be said Saimina, that is ridiculous. I will never say Saimina. That's dumb. It's just Saimin. Lasagna is lasagna.
Instead of trying to, so you're against Hawaiianizing words.
It's silly. Like you were feeling awkward about maikai versus maikai. That makes me feel awkward.
Slipper, kalipa.
Oh, kalipa is straight up. I mean, that's from the 1800s.
Oh, okay.
But palewawai, my grandma taught me. My grandma was actually kind of retentive sometimes as to what word I would use. That is palewawai. And kalipa is slang. And she would distinguish between a scenario where she and I are having a lovely conversation like this. And in this sense, she would more than likely use palewawai. But if the scenario suddenly changes and we're like, oh my God, we're go put on your slippers. Go kalipa. So in that given instant right there, that's when kalipa comes out. And it is true that among the Niihau speakers today, it's more than likely they will say salipa klipa. But you will also hear, especially the older Niihau people today, will say palewawai. And when I hear them say that, immediately my mind goes back to grandma because she would agree with them. And so I follow that tack.
Okay. So it's okay to use the English words while speaking Hawaiian if you don't know it.
Right. I mean, if you're going to cringe over it, to me, I look at, and I've come across in my years of association with the new speaker crowd, that cringe. And then that's the type of people who, but can't you say like sociomekia? And I'll be like, no, it'll be just social media.
Yeah. And I know some other languages, they just use I'm going to just relate to Madagascar because French is their second language.
Same, yeah,
so
French.
They use a lot of French words.
Yeah,
but sometimes they forget the Malagasy word and they prefer to use their French.
Exactly. And how many speakers are there of Malagasy? 1 million.
There's 30 million people living there.
Thank you. And still amongst that living modern linguistic community, there is this angst, there's this anxiety sometimes over that very issue. Guess what? I just had a conversation in French a couple of days ago with a group of people in Paris. It was a Zoom call. And the French speakers were having a conniption over the French word for ageism. They could not think of, one was asking the others, comment dit ageism au français? How do we say ageism? And they all looked at each other in Zoom and their eyeballs are, they can't. And how many millions of French speakers are there in the world? And yet they can't come up with an equivalent for this English term, ageism. And self-empowerment, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it in French, their native language. So that's the same example as you're talking about. What do? They'll take the English.
Yeah.
Because it's convenient, it's instant.
Yeah, that's what I would do. If I didn't know a word, I would say it in English, but with a French accent. like
Voila.
refrigerator or whatever. Or whatever it was. But I would always try to use the Malagasy words, like because like, and it would impress the people. Like they would just say, "What is the word for refrigerator? Is frigo or
frigo? Frigo is more of a slang.
Yeah. They'll say that or the actual word. And then after I would say "Vata pafangasiana," and they're like, huh?
So is that the Malagasy?
That's the Malagasy word. Yeah.
Now, how does that break down?
Vata is body.
Oh.
Mangasiaka is code. When you connect certain words, it becomes a P. So it's like Vata Pafangasiana.
Got it.
So it's like the body that's
that
code.
Is so cool.
I love the etymology.
Exactly. That's me. Yeah. I'm so into that. Mahalo, bro. I'm proud of you for being Kanaka. And then
like super
you put yourself in that. I mean, it took a lot for you to put yourself out there like that. There was a lot of fear involved. There was a lot of learning and a lot of anxiety involved in being that person. I've been that person, I know. So in Olelo Hawaii, we say pauhau, pauhau. But for TV with my grandma, it's pahuho'oleleki. That's TV. And then she'll say kiwi. It's the same example as earlier. I said palewawai versus klipa. Kiwi versus pauho'oleleki. Pauho'oleleleo for the radio. For my grandma, that was it. And then it's that older generation Niihau speakers. Same, they use the same word as my grandma. So I know it's legitimate, but yet it's the new speakers, immersion school crowd who insists it's only kiwi. And when I do use pauho'oleleki, they laugh at me. And I'm like, bro, joke's on you.
But it makes sense when you think about, if you go back to the etymology on stuff like lumi ho'opau pilikia.
That's more of a slang. Seriously, it wasn't meant to be taken so seriously.
But then that goes to like the pahu ho'olele is like whatever box that does something with the sound. Whatever box that whatever.
Yeah.
Room where you get rid of your problems.
Yeah.
And even in like Malagasy, which is an older language, it's like masu anju, which is the sun. Okay. It's eye of the day. Masu is maka, Andrew is day. Eye of the day. So a lot.
To mean what?
The sun.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, Masu Andrew. Yeah. So it's like looking at those things and thinking about how instead of just thinking of one specific word, they would do words that explain the word. Like pahu ho'oleleleo.
French, Spanish, same thing.
Yeah.
French and Spanish, the same thing. So that's why and it affects translation. So often when I'm translating whatever, the Hobbit, whatever, a paragraph in English will be like that. In Hawaiian, it'll be literally like that for those type of reasons. Plus Hawaiian is a Polynesian language, Austronesian language, just like Malagasy. So it relies on, in English you have modals. In Polynesian languages you have a verb, and then you have these particles around it that assist the meaning of the phrase that you're spitting out. That's why it's longer than in English. In English, you transform the word into something else. And that informs the meaning of that word within a context and within a phrase with the verb and everything. So whereas in English, you can alter a word and a combination of words. In Polynesian languages, Austronesian languages, you cannot. You add particles to the left and the right of it.
There's no conjugation.
No more.
Yeah, because in these other languages, you conjugate past, present, future. Here, you're ana, kene, ua.
Yeah, the words are going to always stay the same.
Yeah.
So it's the words, that's what you call modals. That's the words that you tack on to assist the meaning in a full thought. And that's why it comes out longer. Same. English has its way of conjugation, but a phrase like or a paragraph, short paragraph like this in English, in French will come out longer. French does have conjugation, but it also has modals like we do. So there's a lot of Spanish similar situation.
We could get so nerdy about this language. I'm so into it. But we got to take a quick shishi break, and we'll come right back with some of the social media questions.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
All right, we're back from a quick shishi break. Mahalo to our drink sponsor, Shaka Tea, providing the best quality mamaki tea shishi. All right, we're going to get into social media fan questions. This comes from Anthony Sanchez 7147. This person wants to know if I want to learn Hawaiian starting with very knowledge. I don't know why he wrote it. I should have just corrected his. I'm trying to understand what he means by this. If you want to start learning Hawaiian starting with very knowledge, what is the best way to learn? Oh, maybe he forgot to write little.
Well,
very little knowledge. What is the
okay,
best way to learn?
I mean, I've come across that question many times, right? The thing is that our Hawaiian linguistic world out there has been so heavily damaged through the 1900s in particular, and World War II was the hammer, the clincher, because it was the Hawaiian language was community was in decline already at the time, only by social pressure and public pressure to relinquish Hawaiian for English. But World War II was when Pearl Harbor, the bombs dropped, all the American flags went up, and the propaganda was through the roof. They were carting off our Japanese neighbors. My mom can even tell you, to concentration camps, and that was it. Parents at that time said, no, that is it. You are not speaking Hawaii. We're only speaking English. You see those guys going over there? That could be us. So no, just stick to English. And then that carried over till today. So we're so heavily damaged that what we're left with today is just a Jampapa fragments of Hawaiian history. We're left with fragments, literally fragments. So, in other words, cling to whatever you can grab. Maluhi is a good example. Just cling to whatever you can grab. I'll throw on a caveat to that, because here I've been, kind of mumbling or grumbling in a way about the new speaker and what's happening in the classrooms and this and that. And every single teacher was that student. Coming from that. So it's a repeating cycle. If that's all you got, go for it. The caveat I'll throw on is, but be open to correction. Be open to real native speaker talk, and be open to learn to be a nuanced speaker who is competent. And be open to that, because that'll happen over time. It's extremely frustrating. It'll happen over years. It'll never happen in a short period of time. If you go to Madagascar, you're thrust among the population. That'll shrink the period of time in which you acquire the language, because you're in the middle of it, of 30 million speakers and all this. And that is not the Hawaiian situation. You will not be thrust into any community where that is the dominant language, and then you use that stimuli from around you to become a speaker within a short period of time. It's not going to happen. It doesn't exist. So you have to grasp at whatever you can get, but be open, is what I say, to true native speaker talk and the mind of a native speaker.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would just add on, like, learn any way you can. Get any foundation if you can't get the best, from a native speaker, and then learn how to navigate from there, like how I'm doing. I speak Hawaiian fluently, but I'm open to learning different ways of speaking and different ideologies, because it's just one way, and I don't even know if it's the right way. Is there a right way?
No, there is not. There's no way. No, there's no
I think
way.
There's levels to it too.
There's different, yeah.
I feel like
my experience is my experience. I do know people on Kaua'i from my hometown, for example, who grew up like me, not Hawaiian speakers, and now are, because they partnered with the Niihau. And that's that organic, natural experience, because they became the partner of a Niihau. They got thrust among that family, and then the whole network of the Niihau community. And that's more like my experience. So I have friends that I grew up with on Kaua'i who are now Hawaiian speakers, were not before, and zero classroom.
Like Maluhia.
Right.
But so, do the people of Niihau not leave? How come they don't just go to
I know people on Kaua'i have never been to Honolulu.
I feel like they have so much knowledge that they can share with people. Is there a reason?
There is at the same time a certain sort of apprehension to the outside world. And it is absolutely true because I've seen it firsthand. Niihau people being denigrated and spoken of in unfriendly, unkind ways
Mm.
by my own colleagues in the new speaker community who they're like, oh, that's. I've actually heard colleagues, a colleague say in the past, Niihau people speak effed up Hawaiian.
Hmm.
And that attitude has come across in different circles across the new speaker community. Then, on another level, another dimension, having grown up in Kekaha, gone through elementary school, their public school system, watching my Niihau friends my age being whisked away into special ed because they couldn't speak English.
Mm.
Not because they genuinely needed special ed, but because they couldn't speak English. And so that stigma has stuck over generations because it wasn't just them. It was also their parents went through the same thing, grandparents went through the same thing. And so that stigma is a thing. And so they come out of it as a group with this group PTSD,
Mm.
where they look at the powers that be, the Department of Education, as that monster that treats them this way. So there's that. Then you got those who do venture out and are encouraged. I kind of envy that in a certain way. There's a part of me that wishes I had never left Kauai. I had never left Kekaha because now, but then again, I have benefited from having gone and lived in other places in the world because I have a more worldly sense. And with that worldly lens, I look back at Kekaha and think to myself how fortunate I was to have grown up there and known the people I've known. Um, so you cannot say there's one approach to learning anything. So there's no one correct way.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you, I'm absolutely I'm actually I'm very adamant about this attitude that using English for translation's sake to learn Hawaiian that's not the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way they would teach Malagasy to us is they don't speak English.
Thank you.
They only speak Malagasy, and that's how we were taught to teach the people English. Is we don't speak Malagasy to them, we speak English. Because I guess it helps you learn faster, or like you really have to use more deductive reasoning.
It
and
can. Well, my PhD is in language teaching, language acquisition theory and practice. So yes, it can if it's in an actual guided way, and it does require professional training to be able to understand, the principles and then the structure of formulating scenarios where language is presented and where you do language, not talk about language. So you're correct in that it can help to foster a quicker pace.
Interesting. Have you been to Niihau?
Yeah.
What is it like there?
It's like if you're compared to Oahu, it'd be more like the Nanakuli Wai'anae Makaha side.
Dry.
Yeah, dry, same type of brush, lots of kiawe trees, but no more pali like that. Yeah, Niihau is more plateau, and then one pali on the Kaua'i side that drops.
And then what, like superstores, or I mean, like mom and pop shops?
No, not at all.
Like markets?
No, not at all.
What?
Yeah, so there's supplies that are brought over by the boat, and then the way it is now, I mean, in many ways, it's similar to how it was generations ago, through the 1900s, I should say. But there was a bigger population of people, 1970s going back, early 1900s, definitely 1800s, early in the 1820s, the first census that was done, I forget the year, 1830, 1840, something like that, 1,000 people.
Wow.
And now we're lucky if it's 100. Different times of the year, holidays, everybody on Kaua'i flocks over to Niihau for Christmas holiday.
What are the houses like?
Plantation style house, old style plantation house. They built themselves.
Wells. or
Get
running water.
wells. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so curious. One day I hope to go there. Okay, next question comes from Kau Corner. Which kumu/manaleo inspire you to strive for excellence in your work?
First of all, I reject the word manaleo straight up. It's an no. No. Manaleo is somebody made up. If you look it up in the Puku'i Albert Dictionary, it was invented by Larry Kimura and Pilo Wilson, I think, in the 1970s, 1980s. It actually says so in there. You can go look it up. Consists of two words, mana, which is, like when a mom feeds a new baby and then chews up the food and then puts it in the mouth of the baby. That's a noun. And then leo is also a noun. It's a double noun thing, which is kind of odd. And you'd have to explain to a native speaker what manaleo means. So it's a word that was made up for a native speaker that a native speaker would never understand. And why did you not create a word for a second language speaker? Native speaker it's a relative term relative to what? Second language speaker or a new speaker. Why was not a term? It was a new speaker who invented that word for a native speaker, but didn't invent that word for themselves. You know what I mean? Another word for themselves to describe themselves. That's the othering. I'm going to turn the native speakers who are the center of the Hawaiian language universe and make them the malihini by branding them a thing, but never branding one for me, the haole, the new speaker. But if you're talking about that model native speaker, obviously it's my grandma. But my grandma is that same model, same role model as all the Niihau people, all the other kupuna I've ever known. And, my ohana members of her generation who are in Hilo growing up too. So straight up, it's all of these, it's no one that comes from any classroom, any university, any school. It's always these people, if that's the question that's being asked.
Yeah. And what is your connection to Hilo?
My mom was born Keaukaha, and I consider
Right.
Keaukaha my other hometown. I'm from Kekaha, and so my mom went from Keaukaha to Kekaha. So my mom always taught us growing up a million times. She said, whenever you say the name Keaukaha, you stand up and you salute and you put your hand on your heart. And so I always get a tickle out of that. So I took ohana across Hilo, Puna. My grandma was born in Ka'u, Honuapo, but raised in Puna in Halepili, in a grass house in Kehena, Oahu. Kehena, over there in Puna, which with my grandma. My grandma's gone. She's waiting for me over there, and she's probably getting irritated with me too. But anywho, her youngest sister is still here. She just made 100 years old this past December, and that's my Auntie Momi Bell. Auntie Momi, I still talk to her only in Hawaiian. She answers me back in English. She forget how to talk.
Do you know Auntie Leafy? Oh, okay.
No.
She's one of the native speakers. She lives in Hilo. My dad learned from her.
Oh,
yeah.
What's her last name? Keaukaha?
Pratt. No, I think Pratt is the last name. I don't know. Maybe there's another. I'll go call my dad after this.
Cool.
Okay. Next question. This is a little change from language. Jack O'Donnell, 23, wants to know, do you have any ideas? You know who that is?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas on how to create effective solutions for a housing crisis in Hawaii?
Yeah. Anyway, shout out to my bro Jack. He is a teacher over at HPA, where I taught the other year. And so he's one of my solid brothers from my HPA days. But he's an example of a very consciously aware educator. So what he's getting at is the systematic problems that we're having with housing. There are so many ways you could go with that, and but I'm not a fan of capitalism at its core. Capitalism is a system of difference. It only exists relative to rich, relative to poor, and it put us out. It put us off the coasts because, according to capitalism, the prettiest things go to the richest people, such as beachfront property. Whereas for Polynesian, that's you will live or die because of your skill set, you know. And if your skill set is you're the fisherman, you need to be on the coast. Well, that's no longer a thing. Capital doesn't care about your skill set, doesn't care about your heritage, doesn't care about your any of that. So why should I be impressed? So that's just one direction that you could go. Another direction we could go is the real estate market and the system, which again is based on what capitalism. Why is it that in Japan a house is like any of these things that you buy? You drive out, you buy, go to the car lot, buy a brand new spanking beautiful looking car, shiny and new. Once you drive it off the lot, what happens? It decreases in value. That's how the real estate market works in Japan. A house is no different than a car, and it decreases, not increases in value. So that's why there are many empty houses sitting around Japan, just vacant. Um, and so the improvements you do to it, just like the improvements you do to a car, will sustain its value and improve its value, not just because it exists. Therefore, the value goes up, and that's how the market goes today. So, are there solutions? Yeah, change the system. Change the system. Is that going to happen? I doubt it, because of the greedy interests of people who think that we must fight for this system that exists. Well,
Mhm.
who does it serve? Who benefits from the system as it is today? We definitely know as Kanaka that it hasn't served our needs. Whereas if you want to talk about the constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom with native tenant rights, there is it begins with the philosophy that the Kanaka who emerge as our own Haloa, each of us is a Haloa who emerged out of this ground, has an inalienable right to land. That's how the Hawaiian Kingdom Constitution, that's the founding philosophy of the Hawaiian Kingdom Constitution. So that guaranteed that we had a place.
Mm.
But in since the era of the U.S. occupation, 1893 till today, no, the greed of that system is what dominates, and so people will fight to preserve that system. So do I have a solution? Hell no. That's a very huge committee of people who are going to have to address the problem.
Yeah, it's an ongoing issue. But mahalo for sharing your mana'o. Mrs. Luis 808 wants to know any tips for learning as an adult and immersing keiki and Olala Hawaii living on the mainland.
You could be in the mainland, you could be here, and you'll have the same problem. When Maluhia picked it up, he was in the States. And this is my mainland.
Mhm.
That is it. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can grasp at whatever is there. Mahalo to podcasts like you, and for the YouTube, and for all of the modern technology that's there. You could be there, you could be here, and you'll still have the same problem. So grasp at whatever you can, and just remember that caveat that I throw onto there, that asterisk.
Mhm.
Keep yourself open.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep yourself open.
Super true. Okay, so the follow-up question from Happiest Girl in Venice. How does Keal recommend to learn Hawaiian?
Yeah, mahalo. I would say don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to a curriculum. Don't limit yourself to a textbook approach. Don't limit yourself. Don't. One thing you especially don't want to do is don't be a member of the cult of personality. So don't attach yourself to a person that cool. and say, yeah, but Kumu said you need to disavow any individual and accept the collective,
Yeah.
accept the crowd. So my preferred way is to always prefer the native speakers. Mahalo for Larry Kimura and his producing the Kaleo Hawaii series that got picked up by Puakea Nogomeyer and Tilo Lena. But I'm from Kauai. My first thinking is, if anyone isn't aware, that's a collection of these native speakers who were interviewed through the 1970s, 80s, and then into the 90s. There are only a few left. It doesn't exist anymore. Why? Because there are no more speakers to interview like this. But on Kauai, we have the KUAI is a radio station. And as I grew up, every Sunday night, there was a 2-hour-long program by the Niihau community. They would have their program. And a lot of it was a lot of Hawaiian music, sometimes live music in studio, and a lot of, it was a Sunday night, so a lot of Bible study oriented talk. However, there was a lot of live call-ins and people just going back and forth between Niihau, because you can call from Niihau and across Kauai, and there will be a back and forth. And so that would be a live exchange. When I was living with grandma, it was still going on. And in Hau'ula, Oahu, and we could catch KUAI. And once in a while, I would listen on a Sunday night. And a few times, because it made me sentimental for Kauai, so I would call in as well. So I would prefer, so if you're going to ask me what's my recommended way, prefer the native speakers. When you hear them, look at them as the ideal. And if you hear otherwise from other sources, new speakers especially, hold it for a while, hold on to it. And then when you see the example of the language coming out of our native speakers, give this one up and take that one.
You're inspiring me to kind of relearn what I know. I keep thinking in my head, don't say la mai kai, don't say la mai kai.
Don't say po mai kai.
Yeah, don't say.
Yeah.
Hey, we say po malie.
That's Maori.
Okay.
That's Maori. Maori say that.
My dad also says, so we don't say good night, we say manuele po, which is Samoan.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
My dad
You
says
say
that.
aloha ayahi.
Yeah.
Aloha ayahi. Hia moi me ke ino, aloha ayahi. Yeah. No, po malie is from Maori. People borrowed it from the Maori. That's a Maori expression, not a Hawaiian expression.
My dad says the Samoan one because he grew up with some Samoan. So
I remember him
uses
talking
that.
about that.
Yeah.
I
So
do remember him talking about that.
He knows a little Samoan.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last question comes from my stepdad, Kaloa Robinson. He wants to know, what's the difference between a Hawaiian linguist and a Hawaiian language teacher?
Ooh, big one. I knew it would come from him. There's this thing about English, when somebody is really latches onto any subject, that you can create a sphere of like-minded individuals and add IST to it. So I have a friend in Barcelona who's really into Esperanto, which is an invented language, international. And he loves Esperanto, and he's an Esperantist. He's an Esperantist.
Is that the language that's supposed to be the universal language of the world?
Yeah, but I got he's also a retentive linguist like I am, and so we have these intellectual debates where he's all into it. And at Kekaha Elementary School, we learned Esperanto in 5th grade.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
They would teach us Latin at Navajo Kalanipu. Philo Wilson would teach us Latin for some reason.
I mean, learning any other language is a good thing because it takes you out of yourself.
Yeah.
I support all that. And for us, it was Esperanto. And for us, it was just teacher was teaching us Esperanto. I came to learn over the years that it was the most bizarre thing for people. I say that, oh yeah, we had Esperanto. It's like, why on earth did you guys... I thought it was just another class at the time. But anyway, so here's my friend. He's an Esperantist. So a linguist is someone who is enthusiastic about learning languages. And then a Hawaiian speaker versus a linguist. A Hawaiian speaker is a doer of the language. That's why earlier at the beginning of our conversation, I was saying how I was interested in the nuts and bolts of the nitty gritty of being nuanced with language. That's a doer of the language. And a linguist is someone who picks at and analyzes and talks about that language over there. So every time you have a Hawaiian language class where it's mostly conducted in English and you're talking about Hawaiian, oh, and Hawaiians do this, oh, and the Hawaiian language goes like this, that's picking at the language and not doing the language.
Mm-hmm.
If doing the language isn't the basis of the teaching approach in the classroom, then you're being a linguist and not a Hawaiian speaker.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. I think that makes sense. I gotta think about that a little bit more.
Process.
Yeah. Okay. And then he also wants to know, what is your vision for the Hawaiian language?
It's going to do its own thing. My vision isn't to do anything about it. My vision is I'm here, and while I'm here, I'm going to participate to the extent possible in my way that I feel I'm being true to myself. When I taught for 17 years at UH Manoa, not once did I ever stand up and teach to the class to say these all the isms that come out of the Lexicon committee. For example, the sports.
Mm-hmm.
I have never taught other people to say po peku, po hinai.
Football,
To
basketball.
me, that is a bastardization of the Hawaiian language. How dare you take the word po, which is a sacred thing, po, maika po mai, and turn it into ball. Po
Mhm.
does not mean ball. Po is night.
Mm.
Kini po po peku. Peku is the way my grandma would talk about football. Kini po po hinai. Kini po po hili la au. For baseball, and you will read in the Hawaiian language newspapers of the 1900s articles about sports games that just happened over the weekend. Kini popo is always the word. There was no reason to cut kini popo and turn it into po. Po peku means a night for kicking. Po hinai is a night for basket. Po hili is a night for hitting.
Po akahi is Monday.
Po akahi is Monday, and
Yeah,
that's a
but it uses
legit.
the right
And that's a
use of
legit.
po,
Yeah,
right,
exactly. Yeah. Po alua.
Mhm.
Keep in mind that in the early 1800s, they had monile, tuleke, weneke. They had those two.
What? I didn't
Yeah,
know
it
that.
existed. But it was between these two systems of talking about the 7 days of the week, which is a Western concept anyway.
Mhm.
There were these two competing ideas. And I'm glad Po'akahi stuck. Yeah, because it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Po'akahi, Po'alua.
Yeah. And speaking of the po, it's interesting in some languages how they use mahina for month and moon.
Yeah.
Because in Malagasy, it's the same vulana and vulana.
Many languages, even in Japanese and Chinese, the character is the same character for moon as for month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's how they would track.
Exactly.
It's because of the moon.
Very universal.
Yeah.
Very universal.
Yeah. So interesting. What would you say is like the biggest difference between the Niihau language and the Hawaiian language that we speak? So like how would
New
you
speaker talk?
Yeah, like how would you explain the difference to somebody?
Niihau language comes from a Niihau mind, and so it comes from within. But the new speaker variety that's happening, and by far, if you count the number of bodies who use this new speaker variety of Hawaiian today, far outnumber, right? That doesn't mean it dominates. What dominates is everyone had always intended to be that native speaker. So even new speakers from the 1970s, when it became a thing, and into the 1980s, where it became more of a thing, and then boom, big explosion, 1990s and beyond. Everyone had always intended to be that native speaker, looking at Tutu, looking at the Niihau, and always desiring, envying, wanting to be that. Everyone had always looked at that. So that means they're pointing to that. So the Niihau are the heroes in that regard. The difference is, first of all, that perspective. You're looking at it. If you're perceiving it in that way, that means you're already on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you went ahead and went through 4 years of UH, Manoa, Hilo, it doesn't matter, and then came out of it being that new speaker, you are still on the outside. So that's one thing. That means that ila maikai reflects your outside position. And a native speaker would never say that. And that reflects the inside perspective. So that's a fundamental thing, that is that mental bridge that if you can arrive at there, then you're beginning to be and think like a true native speaker of Hawaiian. So that's a fundamental difference. I mean, if you want to talk about the words that we use, there are countless examples that we can point at.
And then, so what's the easiest way to know, like, instead of K's, they use T's?
And that wasn't just that is not just in Niihau phenomenon. Hilo native speakers, even many who have been recorded by Larry Kimura and Clinton Kanahele and others that I've even come across. Maui people, kupuna that I've known from that I bumped into. My grandma, I remember a time being with my grandma, and she was an active participant in the kupuna program at the community center in Hau'ula. She would go, she would put on her mumu'u, make her hat. She'd make me make a lei, so I would haku lei for her hat, because she wanted to show off. And there were other kupuna her age who were Hawaiian speakers, and I got to meet a number of them. And one time she told me, that man over there, she told me, and she whispered on the side, and I listened, and I noticed that he would use a lot of T, but he's not Niihau, he's from Maui. Taugita'a, stuff like that. And a lot of people from Kona, they would say eono ehitu. And kahito, I would hear them say, which is straight up Niihau, but these are people from Kona. Hilo, some Hilo kupuna would say wahelewi takula. Ko'uakamali'i heleo takula. So further back you go into the 1800s, from that time the committee voted on the Hawaiian alphabet and stuff. They were voting on this alphabet in an environment where everyone was speaking just like Niihau people. And it's the people, to me, that's the bigger mystery, is why did everyone agree to follow that? Just because you write with a K doesn't mean you have to say K. You know full well that in your normal speech, you would have said T in that instant there. You could have done the same in Tahitian. It's TTT, same, they had a committee voted for T. In T, there is K too. And you make the same K and T changes in Tahitian as you do the Niihau. The same rules apply. Kanaka, ta'ata. Itiwi kera ta'ata. That's how you speak Tahitian. So you say kera ta'ata in spoken Tahitian. So even though you're seeing a T in written print, tera ta'ata, kera kanaka, they still would say kera ta'ata because it came out of your mouth faster.
So it'd be tamata.
Yeah, temata.
Temata.
In your Tahitian case, Tahitian, which I know a few temata.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, mahalo everybody for the social media fact and questions. Make sure you leave some for our next guest, and maybe your question will make it on the podcast. Before I get to the back half questions, I want you to break down some misconceptions, because I want to, make sure we post this on social media so we can start educating people. I know Maluhia already started, where it's like Honolulu, Honolulu. What else? Aloha, the aloha, haole, haole, aloha, all those stuff. Because there's a lot of misinformation, I would say, with that, and stuff that I subscribe to because I didn't know better. Like, I remember explaining to people, haole, because they don't have any breath. Or when we do aloha, it's because we have our alo to alo, and we take the ha from each other. Like, I've perpetuated those thoughts because that's what I was taught,
And I remember back in the 80s hearing these thoughts, and I never took them seriously. I always went, okay. I mean, it's a lovely thought to think of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's haole. It's never been haole. Aloha, never been aloha. But this ha concept, that was grasping off a very specific Hawaiian custom, which is a death custom. It's associated with death, is that last dying breath. You would capture usually the person dying. They're dying a slow death, and then they know they're about to die. So they will take their favorite person, family member, whoever, and bring them over. And there are different ways to do it, but one way was to have a calabash and with water in it, and they would literally breathe into it, and that's hot. And then they would cover it and then pass it to this favorite person, and that person would breathe, would either suck that in or drink that water, and that would you're ingesting spiritually this last breath of this person, symbolically transferring all their mana, all their ike and mana by you doing this. That's that tradition, that this ha thing. And like I said in Maluhia's thing, ha is you're using your mouth, not your nose. So don't confuse it with the honi. You know, when you honi and you meet and then you press noses, you can go, you don't, it's not necessary. And I've heard variations. I heard that actually it's not on the nose. You go over here and you go, so the two sides. But in either case, you're going, not.
Just breathing.
Yeah, because honi means to smell. Yeah, honi is also the word to smell.
Yeah.
And so don't confuse those two customs.
And make sure you don't confuse it with the other definition of honi when you go kiss somebody, when you go do that.
Well, that became nothing wrong with that, you know, seriously. But yeah, that's also beautiful. But yeah, so anyway. And then earlier you said Honolulu, Hanalulu. Actually, for a Kaua'i person, that's funny because Kaua'i is, everything is Hana. Hana pepe, Hana lei, Hana ma'ulu. Everything is Hana. And then over here you got Hanauma. And then you got a couple other hanas on Maui. There's hana something over in outside of Lahaina. And on Hawaii, there's at least one hana, you know, on the drive when you're going up from Hilo up north. You get the three horseshoes. And then there's one hana.
There's Honomu.
Yeah, no, it's past. Hana. Yeah, it's way. There's a one. It's not even a town.
Yeah.
It's a sign that you see on the road, and that's the only one. But Kauai, everything is hana, and so hana hono are the same thing. Linguistically, people who analyze Polynesian language suggest that the Hawaiian hana, hana lei, hana pepe is the older form of the language than hono, and so hana hono are for a Kauai person. We chuckle because you can actually say hana lulu if you know what you're doing. But if you're saying it because you're lazy, then you're doing it ignorantly, and you should stop that.
Yeah, but I hear too, it's not so much hanalu, it's hon.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they read it as hon.
But then again,
hon, like honey.
But that's my pet peeve with the immersion school students. They can't get the a, e, I, o, u vowel pronunciation right. They go ah. So they call their dad papa. That's not Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Papa is not papa. That's more like PAW kind of a thing. And
or even the eyes, kahakai.
Yeah, they can't get it right. That's kai is kukai.
Yeah.
So people who argue for the molokai versus molokai, they're not even getting that right. If you're going to omit that okina over there, then it's molokai, not molokai, which is the normal local jargon, local pronunciation, Kauai, lanai. For a Hawaiian ear, I heard you say Kauai. I heard you say lanai, molokai. If you're going to say kai, that's short for kukai.
Which is poop.
So be aware. I mean, be educated. If you're going to make that argument, then get the pronunciation right before you start making that argument. My great-grandfather's name is John Molokai. It's never been Molokai. John Molokai. And so it's personal for my family. It's Molokai. It's never been Molokai. And it's never been Molokai, I guarantee you that.
What about Kaniohi?
I mean, that's getting silly already. Yeah. That's just being silly. That's just as bad as Kalanianioli.
I started not getting as upset with people when they say that because I realized they just don't know better.
Yeah.
And but that's why we need to educate them. But when the local people do it and they keep doing it, they're...
But here's my thing. When I now that I'm an adult and now that I have a PhD because I'm a nerd, I just came from Kauai yesterday, and I was just in a conversation yesterday, and even this morning with Kauai people who kept saying Kauai, Kauai, Kauai. My thought in my head is, when did we start doing that?
Mm.
When did we start not saying Kauai as local people and saying Kauai? And it's because of immigration. And it's because us natives became the minority.
Mm.
And we were dominated by this bigger population that also felt entitled to dictate to us how to live, how to talk. So that's why Kanaka today are many times embarrassed to have someone who does speak Hawaiian in the face of them, fellow local, my neighbor, next door neighbor, who always says Kauai, Kauai, naturally without even thinking about it. And here comes Keal, and I say Kaua'i, suddenly they get uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Exact same uncomfortable you talked about earlier, that we had talked about. They feel uncomfortable in my presence because I say Kauai, but I say Kauai without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they say Kauai without thinking about it. So now we get this awkward moment.
Yeah. I would say just learn. I've met people who try to switch over to, instead of saying Hawaii, they go Hawaii. Like even people that don't even live here, they start saying Hawaii or Hawaii. I like that. I appreciate that.
But you gotta watch it in context too. So, because for grandma, one of the pet peeves of many from the classroom experiences, teachers who are telling their students, no, you have to say it Hawaii.
Mhm.
That's only one of a number of ways to pronounce it. Grandma says, walau Hawaii, 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 Hawaii. She did it all, and it's all equally correct. But to insist that it only must be Hawaii all the time is annoying to my ear. But then you gotta watch South Park Going Native.
Oh, that's
you gotta
such
watch
a good
it.
episode.
Oh, my
Yeah.
little keiki, we're going to Hawaii.
Yeah. My
You gotta
Mahalo
watch.
reward card.
That has to,
Yeah.
yes. You have to have, that has to be required watching when the plane lands in Hawaii. All the time. That
I
has
love
to be.
that.
They should legislate that into the law.
I agree. I'll sign off on that.
Oh my gosh. Because the makers of the film, they have property of Kauai. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love them.
Do you know them?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just love them anyway.
I would love to get them on the podcast.
Me, yeah. I know.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. I wanna watch from the window
Yeah,
outside. over there.
yeah. I think Matt Park or Trey,
Right.
Trey Park, something like that. But yeah. Anyways, what else pet peeves do you have in the Hawaiian language?
Too many to count. People will hate me if I do that. I mean,
No, there's so many things that I want to correct people.
I don't want people to hate me, please. But
No,
but then again,
they gotta know. Like in the last episode with Kuana Torres Kahele,
yeah,
we
well,
corrected
Kuana is
people.
Kuana, though,
Yeah, we
so-
corrected people on the haku and versus leipo.
Oh,
Because
okay,
that's
okay,
such a
okay.
common misconception.
Yeah. And I love Kuana. Big shout
Yeah.
to Kuana. He's one of the people I really admire out there. He's an example like a Maluhia. He is open to grasping from actual native speakers. So big shout out to anyone who does that. So yeah, and Kuana definitely is one of them. But pet peeves. Now that you asked me, while we're talking, so many pop up, and now that you're asking me, I went. But pronunciation is one thing. But yeah, and for the new speaker community out there, you do not have the right to dominate and dictate to native speakers what legislations should be about Hawaiian language. So this legislation that is, or bills that are put out there from my colleagues in the universities and such, don't you dare think that we should work into legislation the Okina and Kahako and require it, because our Niihau speakers, I can tell you, are aghast every time we have to go testify in court against this bill, because we do not use Okina Kahako, do not infer that government should legislate Okina Kahako and such, because that is distressing to native speakers. No, we will not. And we do not appreciate government dictating to us that the language must be written this way. It serves its purpose. It helps non-speakers and those who are learning. Don't push it on us.
Mhm. It's interesting how the word haole became or haole became haole when there's no kahakos or
Never was.
okinas.
And haole is the Marquesan term. So
Mhm.
there is a cognate haole in another Polynesian language. It's
Mhm.
never been. Now, it's interesting to look at this word haole. 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 No, Kamapua'a was known as haole back in that day. It wasn't because he was white. It was because he came from another, or his ohana came from Tahiti. It's a foreign country. And that's why he was called Haole. When Captain Cook was referred to as Haole and his men, it wasn't because they were white, it was because they came from somewhere mysterious, away, across the sea. That's why they're called Haole, not because they never have breath. Of course, everybody has breath. No, somebody made that up, and they intended it, I believe, they intended it as a mnemonic device.
Mm.
But it's misguided. It's misguided. I never took it personal. I always went, ha. I never took it seriously. So the thing about aloha, I mean, it's a beautiful, pretty picture. It's wrong, yes. Ha'ole, it's wrong, yes. This thing about somebody made that chart, la, o, he, a. And then the a is for akahai,
Oh,
la is for
Pilahi
lokahi.
Paki.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's not where that isn't the etymology of aloha either. It was just a mnemonic device somebody made. It's pretty to look at. Yes, akahai is beautiful, lokahi is beautiful, fine. It doesn't mean don't confuse the message. You know what I'm saying? So people who are not in the know are easy to beguile. They're easy to fool. And for those who are in the know and you did that, and now you're all proud of yourself that your thing latched on to the community, shame on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is haole a derogatory term?
No. Olelo haole it's an adjective for us. Absolutely not. So olelo haole is how you say English. Kamea haole, my dad is haole. I'm half haole. I'm not
Papa
derogatory.
haole.
Yeah. No. Tourist. Is tourist a derogatory word?
No.
You fucking tourist. Now it's derogatory.
Yeah.
You damn tourist. And how about this? Is local a derogatory word?
No.
Freaking local.
Mm.
Now it's derogatory.
So
So in
depends on
context, yeah.
your
You
love
can
and
turn any word into a derogatory word. If you're mad at it and you're spitting it out, you animal.
no animal just became derogatory. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And going off of the breaking down of aloha, one question that I like to ask my guests when they come on the podcast is their meaning, their definition of aloha, and how do they keep it aloha in their own life? Because this podcast is called Keep It Aloha.
Yeah.
So in your life, how do you keep it aloha?
Being open-minded. Aloha encompasses the whole spectrum. It is appropriate to be angry sometimes. Just watch out what you're angry at. Be angry at the thing that needs to be angry at, and give it its space. But when you blow anger, blow and let it go. Just let it keep going, because it's aloha that stays after.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Let go of the ha, keep the alo.
Oh yeah, why not? Yeah, and that's a beautiful thought.
Oh,
I support all of that mnemonic device. Is awesome. Use it.
Yeah, that's cool. I gotta play with that one a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So, growing up, were you always confident and aware of the role you're playing in culture and in the Hawaiian culture? Did you ever have insecurities about like being who you are?
Massive.
Yeah.
When I grew up in an era where it wasn't cool. It was not cool. If you really engaged in the Hawaiian thing, you're branded the Hawaiian thing, and you're often branded as mahu. That was it's not fun. It was not fun. Misplaced, it's this kind of that was the era I grew up in. Now it's more cool. I remember Mede, Kekaha Elementary School. I was asked to be the kahuna on the Mayday court because, and here we are at sixth grade, I think, fifth grade, sixth grade. I was asked to be the kahuna. My mom, who was a kumuhula, taught me mele aloha, oli aloha. Eh, Oh, now nai kahala me ka lehua. She taught me that. And I had to do it and I belted it. I nailed it. I belted it. I did the whole thing, wore the thing, but I was afraid after. I was proud of myself, actually. And my mom showed up and she was in the audience. I was very proud to have done it. But that was done in an area where it was not cool. People did not chant in public. I did it. I did my thing, and after I went like this, I was hoping like people would forget that I did that, because I didn't want the after effect. I didn't want to be looked at as that strange kid who did that thing, that strange thing. And yet, that was elementary school. And Iulani Luahine, the famous hula dancer and chanter, came to my school around that time. Soon before, after, I think after that Mayday performance, to perform at my school with Auntie Hoakalei Kamau, who my mom had actually danced for a while. And Auntie Iulani stayed at my house. My mom invited her to stay at my house. I remember being so impressed and scared to death of this lady staying at our house. And she actually stayed in my room while she was there to have this performance at my elementary school. I was enthralled, completely captivated with her performance. Her eyes, her eyelids just go. And she gave, you know how today in halau, they teach you, no, your hands have to be perfectly straight and it has to be like this. And she did not give one rat's okolea about like this and like this. And her eyeballs would just go. And I remember being, I was captivated like, I thought it was almost like voodoo dance because I just saw spirit and energy around her, that kind of a thing. But and I was a kid, did not want to be branded as someone who participated in that. So that was uncomfortable. Now it's safe. We're in a safer space today.
Yeah, mahalo for sharing that. One question I get asked a lot is it okay for me to learn Hawaiian if I'm not Hawaiian or I'm not from here?
In the Hawaiian kingdom, everyone is a Hawaiian speaker. Everyone is a Hawaiian speaker. When you go to any country, you either pick up the language of the country or you don't and be ostracized. Your choice. In this day, considering the reality of our language space, I do get issues when somebody who isn't Hawaiian kind of steps up into that space and dictates to others the Hawaiian language space. I do get touchy about that, given the environment we're in. And at the same time, it's conflicting because it is true that said person may have had more learning, but and I've been in those spaces where, having come from where I've come linguistically from the home of my grandma and all of these people and stuff, and then having been confronted in the university space where things that are normally said by native speakers are actually said to be wrong, and stuff that makes me angry, that puts me up, that puts my dukes up. Serious, don't you dare talk about my grandma like that.
That's when the West Side boy comes out.
Oh, brah, you like see West Side, but I show you. So yeah, no, that would come out, and I didn't care if that person was Hawaiian or not Hawaiian. What you said was wrong, and you can give them a punch in the nose if you don't watch out. And those who take up, so say for instance, someone who isn't Hawaiian invents a new word. Is that word Hawaiian?
No.
Right on. I'm with you. So pepeke, is it a Hawaiian word? No, the person who created it said it wasn't even a Hawaiian word, and yet that person isn't a Hawaiian person. So that's 2 strikes already. There's no reason for anyone to think that pepeke is a Hawaiian word. It is not. And yet it's in the Mamaka Kaiau book. Does that Mamaka Kayao book therefore contain Hawaiian words in it? Well, some words are Hawaiian and other words are not. Is it represented as such? It is not. It is not represented as not a Hawaiian word. So, no, be educated, learn when those words were invented. I was on those meetings. We had those beasts. We had big fights on the committee. We
I
had
can
big
imagine.
fights.
Yeah, different just ideologies.
And I was on the winning side and losing side because just like that committee that voted for the K and the L and the W back in 1826, that's what exactly this committee was. It was a committee of votes. And you're either on the winning side or the losing side. And sometimes we had consensus, and many times it was a majority.
Oh, that's crazy. What advice can you give me as somebody who already speaks Hawaiian to elevate my olelo and try to speak, like get to the level of the kupunas?
Be open. That's all I can say. I mean, that's the Aloha way, right? That's what I was just talking about is Aloha expects the full range. And Aloha welcomes the full range. And I cannot place on you a moral code that I have lived by personally that wouldn't be Aloha. So be open to learning, and you're going to stick to things by habit. And whoever's on the receiving side, me for example, has to also practice Aloha by allowing it its space.
I don't mind being wrong. I like being corrected because I want to know.
Yeah.
Different
and I do. So
ways to
like
do it.
my closest friends that are, and I have a couple friends who by hanging out with me have picked up Olelo Hawaii. And stuff like that. And they do that. And my grandma did it to me. She would correct me. I remember one specific time, it must have been early on. I don't know. I was pretty young. And she was talking to me, and one pet peeve, one that pops up, and you asked me earlier and I couldn't think, but now I can think, is requiring your students to say "eo" when called upon. It is, yes, it's a Hawaiian thing. Yes, it's an old traditional thing. I have never heard a Niihau or kupuna in my lifetime require that. When grandma ever called me, is I. Keao, I. Not eo. Eo is such a poetic Malay thing to do. It's like who talks Malay talk on a regular basis. It's just I. But I was remembering that one time she did call me, and I went I, and she goes, and she was irritated. She had her hands on her head. She goes, I. Like I didn't catch it. She caught it. Her ear caught it that I said I. Like the same argument we were talking about Kauai, lanai. If you're gonna screw it up right. It's Kauai, lanai, molokai.
Little nuances.
And she caught it. So she was irritated. She came down the hallway with her hands on her head. I. Oh, I.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think I mentioned to you before we started the podcast, is that I can't get away from saying yeah in all languages just because I say so
Grandma
much
would say yeah
in English.
too.
Yeah. Even in Spanish, I'd be like sí. Or in
Is that not done by Spanish speakers on a regular?
I mean, I guess, but
they just go away.
We do it a lot in Hawaii. Like I noticed, even when I hang out with other people not from here, they're like, you're always saying yeah, no, no. And then in Hawaiian, if we're speaking, and then people say I always say I.
That's another thing. So that's a very Niihau thing to go and grandma would say I more than but rarely, but I most of the time. And sometimes I'll come back from Kaua'i after being there, and when I'm there, I'm with all my Niihau friends, so I'm still stuck in Niihau a little bit. And so grandma would be talking to me, I go and she look at me funny kind like that. In French too, it's like tu vois. It's like, you see, you do that all the time. And I've picked up those habits even in French when I speak French.
So it's not an English thing to say.
No, it's it's a cognitive thing.
Oh, okay. I've been really self-conscious about that recently, about saying I.
Nothing wrong.
I'm like I.
No, that's very kupuna.
Okay.
Yeah, they would do that too, quite a bit.
I can go on with the rest of my life. I feel liberated.
It's reinforcing. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What about the word lucky mai kai? Like good luck. Is that totally?
It is said. Yeah, lucky make it iaoe. It is said.
Is that like a more of an English
1800s,
thing?
1800s.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
how do I know this stuff?
I only know because of who I grew up with. That's all I know. And then you do see it in the text. I guess that would be one thing for you in particular, because you're already at a certain level. You're not down here. You're not at the beginning rising. You're already up over here. I would say immerse yourself in reading materials of the 1800s, Hawaiian language materials. Mahalo to everyone who was ever involved in the formation of Ulukau, papakilo.nupepa.org. Mahalo. You made my PhD research such a blessing. So I want to say that shout out to whoever was involved. I don't know all who were involved, and they're still continuously involved. You have made my life a huge, huge research heaven for inventing Papakilo and nupepa.org. Mahalo, mahalo.
Super cool.
So immerse yourself in all of that access.
Yeah, I'm gonna go call my dad after this, and we can figure out a game plan.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is something you wish people knew about you that they don't? Maybe something that people misunderstand about you.
Okay. So let me see. Fun fact, I moved to UH Manoa 1997. And colleagues at the Manoa side looked at me as a Mahaoi intruder from Hilo. And they didn't realize that I had beefs in Hilo. They didn't realize that I was not afraid to enter in a political beef. They did not know that. And I kind of sensed it. And I let it slide because I was, I'm not going to explain myself. You love me if you know me or not, whatever. And over the years, they got it. In different amounts and at different times and stuff like that. I love a good intellectual conversation, and I am open to being corrected or convinced of a political point. I love it. But my loyalty is to grandma. Grandma is my anchor in this universe, in this world. And don't you dare cross my grandma, kind of a thing. So that's me. So I have, I'm rigid in that sense and super flexible in another sense. So I'm open. I'm glad I got to live anywhere in the world because I'm super broad-minded, super broad-minded.
I feel the same because once you see how the different people of the world live, it opens your eyes to different ways and ways of thinking and perspectives, and like living in Madagascar, seeing poverty firsthand.
Bro, I went there. I remember, man. Slumdog Millionaire is real, bro.
Yeah.
I was so shocked.
If you ever want to go back, let me know.
I do
try to
actually
plan a trip there in the next couple of years.
I want to go with
Ohana
you.
over
I want to
there.
go with you.
Oh, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
I gotta go before I lose too much of the language.
Yeah, I agree. Maluhia, he lived in Ethiopia.
Yeah, we talked about
the language. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it Amharic? Is that what it?
I forget, but I was so impressed. So impressed. And but I would love to go with you next time.
Yeah.
We'll do a podcast from over there.
Oh, I'd love that. Okay. So before we end, we gotta talk about your translations of these books into Hawaiian. I almost forgot about that. You did Harry Potter, The Hobbit, Alice in Wonderland, Chronicles of Narnia, big time books. How did that happen, and like what was the motivation behind that? And how long did that even take you? I would never want to.
I promise that's a whole other podcast. I promise that's a whole other. We can easily take 4 hours.
The Spark Notes
No,
version.
we can easily take 4 hours doing that. But I mean, the work itself is a intellectual. It's intellectual stimulation for me. And I enjoy intellectual conversations as much as I enjoy the intellectual engagement with the text. So it's discourse. And to me, it's conveying the mind of grandma and other native speakers of Hawaiian at all age levels, um, through the text. So I'm a native speaker of English. I wrap my brain around the English text pretty easily. When you talk about Tolkien, though, I'm like, Tolkien, he's a nightmare to translate. And Lewis Carroll was a little bit of a nightmare. But J.K. Rowling, very noticeably modern, very noticeably more easy for me to engage with. So I love seeing the difference in range of linguistic and cultural competency that I see in J.K. Rowling, who is modern, versus Lewis Carroll and Tolkien, who are from the Victorian era. And there, I came to realize how little I knew of British culture, uniquely British culture. And I'm looking at the text as a drawing room. What's a drawing room? And I literally translated it as a room to draw in. Come to find out it's a living room.
Oh, so you did like Vahikaki or something?
I did, absolutely. So I think my first edition of The Hobbit, I might have said Lumi Kahaki'i when it was really Lumi Ho'okipa. It's just the term that they use for living room.
Like they say boot.
Yeah, no, for real, for the car.
For the car.
Flat. Yeah, flat. Yeah. Well, I lived in New Zealand, so that I got ma'atu. And it was after I lived in New Zealand that I started these books. But to me, even till today, you want to know what I'm working on right now?
Oh, yes. Give us a little exclusive sneak peek.
A little tickle.
Yeah.
Tickle for your tummy is, because it's yummy in your tummy, is Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, okay. I thought you were about to get into some Dr. Seuss right there, but
no, it's
Winnie the
yummy
Pooh.
in the tummy is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's the same publisher as The Little Prince, which is edition Tintin Fast coming out of Germany. So they have the rights to do it. So they asked me to do The Little Prince. The original text is in French, so I translated from French into Hawaiian. And then they asked me to do it in Pidgin. And I was like, nobody writes in Pidgin. I resisted. I was like, no ways. I'm going to get laughed out of Hawaii. Nobody does that. And then they kept pressing, bothering me. I finally caved in and I did it in Pidgin. I'm crying, laughing, typing. It was the most hilarious project I ever did. I'm like scream, laugh to myself as I'm typing because I get the text. I make 2 columns. I throw all the original text in the left. I type in the right. And I'm reading for the first time because I'd never read any of these books in my life before. So I'm reading in real time and translating in real time on the right side. And I'm crying, laughing, doing the Pidgin of The Little Prince, the small Pitot Prince. Come to find out, not all local Pidgin speakers ever heard of Pitot. I was like, what? That's the only way to talk about little stuffs when you're a Pidgin speaker of Kekaha, Kaua'i, small Pitot. Oh, he's so small Pitot.
Sounds Filipino.
It does sound Filipino. And checking with the Filipino people, it's not even Filipino.
Huh.
But Petit, which is Le Petit Prince, Petit, P-E-T-I-T, is French for little. Pitot, Petit. And what a coincidence.
I know.
So that was cool. That was a discovery. And so the same publisher has asked me to do Winnie the Pooh in Hawaiian, Winnie Kapu. And they also want it in Pidgin.
Awesome. Where can we find this? Where do
it's not out yet, so you gotta wait.
What about the other stuff like the Harry Potter?
Anywhere, any outlet online, or I want to support our local bookstores. So big shout out to Maile Meyer. Love you, Maile. Native Books. And
my little brother works there. Wow, all these connections.
Yeah, and then Dave DeLuca out there, Best Press. Shout out, and to what you call all of you out there, Big Island, Kaua'i, love you guys. Thank you for all the support. Big energy. For years, the Hawaii Con over in Kona, it's no longer, but for years they have been going, had been inviting me to come over ever since Alice came out, the Hawaiian translations of Alice 2012. Why it came out originally is because, first of all, a request came by email to my department at UH Manoa for someone to do a Hawaiian translation of Alice in Wonderland. Just so happened I had just finished my PhD. I just come home again from New Zealand, where I was doing my PhD. And I said, this is not a bad way, really, to get your name out there because I'm a PhD now. And it's kind of one of those things you are encouraged to do is put yourself out there as an academic. And so I did it for that reason initially. And while I was doing it, I discovered that I really got a kick out of this. I really enjoyed, I really dug the intellectual engagement with the text, like I said, but also messing with discourse. And you're not translating the words, you're translating the mind of that native speaker to the mind of this native speaker. So the end result is, will this set of native speakers enjoy that text as much as the author intended and in the ways the author intended? So that's what that's what got me onto the second Alice, which has Jabberwocky in it. That was extremely difficult to translate, Jabberwocky the poem, and extremely hilarious at the same time. So I super enjoyed that, and that led to all the other books. So now we got the Wizard of Oz. I think right after that was the Hobbit was right away, and that was hilarious. Tolkien, that drives me nuts. Paragraph this big, no period anywhere in that paragraph, drives you mental.
Run-on sentences,
Oh, parenthetical statements here and there, and then other Britishisms in there that drive me mental. And I would obsess, but I enjoyed the engagement, and then till today. So yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the themes that come across through all of these stories, I'm seeing a repeat of the same storyline over and over. What I see in The Hobbit is just an extended version of Alice. What I see in the Harry Potter series is an extended version of The Hobbit. And Wizard of Oz, I see Alice, I see The Hobbit. It's just a repeat
of division.
The storyline, the theme, the narrative is essentially very, very much ringing true. I see J.K. Rowling having many shout outs to C.S. Lewis. She'll throw in a reference to Tolkien, to Lewis, whether in the what do you call the archetypes, the centaur and stuff like that. And certain things they would say is very C.S. Lewis-ish or Tolkien-ish. And so you'll hear these coming out of J.K. Rowling's things. And I see that as a small little salute to these previously well-referenced authors and contributors of the body of literacy to the world. Yeah. So I get a kick out of it.
Super cool. I can't wait to read one of them these days. I'm always saying that I'm going to become a better reader. So.
I want to know what the world wants to see translated. What do you guys want to have as a translation? I've presented at a number of schools, and I've had some suggestions, and I'm curious as to know what the world wants to see translated.
Yeah, I mean, I like rhymes. So I like Dr. Seuss.
Oh, I get a kick out of making Hawaiian rhymes.
Yeah, because I write poetry, and I've written some in Hawaiian. So yeah,
and
maybe one
I
of
get
those for
asked quite a bit. Well, what about original material? Aren't you going to produce original material? I hope to. Can somebody finance me, please?
Right there, somebody go finance
somebody sponsor. Shaka.
Shakati. we got you.
Shaka
we got
my
you.
Original material.
We'll see what we can do.
I would love to. Anywho, I would love to. And my publishers have already told me, Keal, when you produce original material, I will have them translated into every other language. So it'll go backwards. It'll go the other way, other direction. He'll shoot it to his other translators. It'll be available in Spanish, in Cornish, in Gaelic, in Catalan. He'll make it available, my original material, in other languages.
Super cool. Wait, so what is your everyday life like? What is your main?
I do my bread and butter today is I do freelance consulting work.
Oh, okay.
Research consulting, translation quite a bit, but every job is different. I love that my head is spinning constantly. So I'm engaging that project, this project. Sometimes they're kind of related, and I love making the connections between. I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like this other project I was working on, and so I'll grab from that and then look at it, and then look at what they need, and then maybe borrow some aspects or reformulate things. I love the constant new engagement, and that's what I do. It's also unpredictable, and I get a kind of a kick out of the danger of the unpredictability of, am I going to have continuous work along the way throughout the year? And it's been good to me. It's a life that has taken me places. I'm still Platinum Hawaiian Airlines ever since no sponsorship, sorry.
Yeah.
Not yet, Hawaiian Airlines.
Somebody's watching this.
But it's taken me places around the world. And one of the greatest memories that I have, was beautiful memories, was being at a cafe in Paris with my laptop and sitting at a cafe on a street corner in Paris. Beautiful setting, beautiful buildings, enjoying my espresso, putting it down, shutting my laptop after having just sent off my invoice to my client. Pay me.
Yeah.
And that continued to sustain my livelihood of being able to be in Paris and whatnot.
Awesome. What a cool life. I hope I can do half the things that you do one day. Before we end the podcast and we get to our last questions, I gotta know, what is your life hack?
Here's my life hack. The community of Lahaina were our role models when it mattered the most, and they took care of each other. Neighbors took care of neighbors, and they lived for each other. Do that now. Do that now when there is no disaster. Live for your neighbor, because living for your neighbor is living for yourself. And I learned that firsthand, being from Kaua'i, having our house absolutely thrashed by Hurricane Iniki. You know what was so cool about being from Kauai? I'm so proud of my Kauai neighborhood, because after being devastated by Hurricane Iniki, the hurricane was bigger than Kauai and sat square on Kauai, and nobody was spared. Everybody was devastated. The very first thing that happened is we went and picked up the roof from all around our yard and everybody else's thing. The very first thing to happen then was everybody went to the neighbors and said, "You good? How about Auntie over there? You guys okay? You good?" The very next thing was all the emus were going. Every other house had emu. You saw the smoke going up, because everything in your freezer now had to go in the emu. And all there was food passing across on a daily basis. When FEMA came, the emergency people, everyone was refusing service. I'm good, but go check Auntie over there, make sure and then they got so frustrated after days and weeks of being rejected, the FEMA crew. We were inviting them to dinner. So my life hack is do that. Be that person, be that neighbor.
Wow, that was beautiful. So true. Yes. To see what's going on right now, how everybody's treating each other and helping out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Truly, truly amazing.
And also protect each other. If in a situation like the Lahaina scenario, you're also vulnerable at this time. I'm talking about my friends out there, cousins out there, Lahaina side, who are now in a very vulnerable position for being in a position of being victimized. Like people, now that your property and all your ukana is just laid out like that, there's going to be thefts. So watch out for each other. Be that neighborhood watchdog and protect each other and their interests, because their interests happen, you're going to find out in the end, are your interests.
Yeah, fully. Okay, these are the last fast Fave 5 questions. They're just rapid fire answers.
Okay.
Favorite country?
Tahiti.
Favorite Hawaiian word?
Ho'omanawa nui.
Oh, be patient. Favorite way to recharge?
Go mauka.
Like go on a hike?
Yeah.
Nice. Just be in nature.
Yeah.
Do you listen to music? Nothing?
I do. I multitask. I listen to music while working because it stimulates my na'au, my brain, and
Awesome.
my emotions, the way I feel.
Cool. Favorite snack?
Mango.
Ooh, like
Fresh.
fresh mango,
Yeah.
pickle mango, dry mango, lihimui mango.
Fresh primarily. I love the half ripe, but any derivation of mango, less so processed stuff, less so, manufactured packaged stuff, more the pickle mango, more the mango in a fruit salad, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Favorite hobby outside of work?
Ay. Hobby. So many things are coming to my head. I mean, sheesh.
You can list them all.
Oh no, that's danger. Because I love the ocean, and when you said that, some of the first imagery that came to my mind was I love the days when I worked on boats on Kauai. I worked for boat companies, zodiacs, catamarans, other boats, which turned into fishing with friends on their fishing boats and stuff. But that kind of engaging nature like that. Some of my greatest growing moments as a person, a human being, a friend, to my friends that I would do this with were because we had a common purpose, and that was being together on the ocean on these boats because you rely on each other to make it back home. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that counts as a hobby, but being there, I'm not there enough. So it's not a hobby in the sense that I do it all the time, because then I would say translate Harry Potter. And you already said don't do that. So now that I got to eliminate that, then
Okay, no, that's a good answer. We'll go with that. All right. Well, mahalo for joining us today. This has been a very stimulating and educational episode, at least for me. I hope it wasn't like too much for everybody else to digest. Maybe you got to come back, watch it again, watch it in parts. But I really appreciate you for coming here and speaking with me. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Ale mahalo a nui loa ia oe. Nui loa ko mahalo ki iwi ana. Aloha no o kou apauloa po e nana mai nei. Po e ohana ho aloha no e po e malihini po e hou. O kākou no ke ia kākou apauloa ke komo nei loko ke ia papahana. Mea nana ka mea nui, hea ka mea nui o kākou kalahui Hawaii. Aloha no kākou apauloa.
Oh yeah. Where can we find you? If you want to be found.
That was the question I had in my head. Do I want to be found, really? Anywho, get a hold of any of my books.
Okay.
Get a hold of any of my books, and you'll find me in the pages.
Okay, sounds good. Mahalo, Keal, for joining us on the Keep It Aloha podcast. Spread aloha, be kind to one another, and mahalo for listening to us today. We have new episodes every Thursday, so make sure you follow us and leave a review. I'm your host, Kamaka, and remember to always keep it aloha.